The gavel crashed down like thunder, echoing through the packed courtroom. Life without parole. Judge William Harmon's voice boomed with finality, his cold eyes fixed on the 17-year-old black teenager standing before him. Devon Taylor, accused of a crime that never happened, felt the world tilt beneath his feet. But instead of crumbling, the young man lifted his chin, pulled out his phone, and spoke 4 words that would shatter everything. "I'm calling my father." The judge laughed until he heard who was on the other end of that call. Friends. What happened next exposed a web of corruption so deep it reached the highest levels of power. Stay with me until the end of this incredible true story and drop a comment about which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The morning sun cast long shadows across the steps of the Jefferson County Courthouse as Devon Taylor adjusted his tie for the 3rd time. His mother Grace reached over and straightened his collar with practiced hands that trembled slightly. "You've got this, baby," she whispered, though her voice carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken fears. "Just present your project, answer their questions, and we'll be home in time for dinner." Devon nodded, clutching the handle of his presentation case, a modified briefcase containing 6 months of painstaking research, late nights, and a discovery that could change lives in their community. Inside was his air quality monitoring system, a network of sensors he'd built from scratch, using parts salvaged from old electronics and programmed with code he'd taught himself from YouTube tutorials and library books. "The Environmental Justice Committee is gonna love this," his science teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, had assured him the week before. "Devon, what you've documented here, it's groundbreaking. The correlation between air quality in our neighborhood and the industrial zones, this could force real change." But as Devon climbed those courthouse steps, something felt wrong. The security guards at the entrance weren't the usual retired officers who typically manned the metal detectors with sleepy indifference. These were younger, harder men whose eyes tracked Devon from the moment he approached. "State your business," the first guard barked, before Devon could even reach for his ID. "I'm here for the Environmental Justice Committee presentation. Room 304. I'm scheduled for..." "Bag on the belt. Arms out." Devon carefully placed his presentation case on the conveyor belt, watching nervously as it disappeared into the X-ray machine. The guard monitoring the screen suddenly straightened his hand, moving to his radio. "We got a situation here," he announced loudly enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. "Suspicious device in the case." "What?" "No, that's my science project. It's just sensors and..." "Step back." The second guard moved between Devon and the machine, while the first one pulled on latex gloves. "You carrying any weapons, son?" "Weapons? I'm 17 years old. I'm here for a science presentation." Grace stepped forward, her maternal instincts overriding her caution. "Excuse me, officers, there must be some mistake. My son is an honor student. He was invited here by the committee to..." "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step back." The guard's hand rested on his taser. "This is a security matter now." The lobby, which had been flowing with the usual morning traffic of lawyers, clerks, and citizens, had gone still. Everyone was watching. Devon felt their eyes, some curious, some suspicious, some already convinced they were witnessing exactly what they expected to see. Another young black man causing trouble where he didn't belong. The first guard emerged from behind the X-ray machine, holding Devon's project case like it contained a bomb. "You want to explain what this is? It's an air quality monitoring system. I built it for..." "You built it." The guard's voice dripped with skepticism. "This sophisticated electronic device with wires and circuits and batteries. You built this?" "Yes, sir. I can show you the documentation. I have my presentation materials, the invitation from the committee." "Save it for the judge." "The judge? But I'm not here for court. I'm here for the environmental justice." "Not anymore." The guard set the case down roughly, and Devon heard something inside crack. His heart sank. "You're being detained for bringing a suspicious device into a government building. Could be interpreted as a threat." "A threat? It measures air particles. It's for science." But his protests fell on deaf ears. Within minutes, Devon found himself in handcuffs, cold metal biting into his wrists, as they led him not to room 304, where the committee waited, but to a holding cell in the courthouse basement. Grace's desperate attempts to explain were met with bureaucratic stonewalling. "He's a minor," she pleaded. "You can't just—" "He's 17, ma'am. Old enough to know better than to bring suspicious devices into a courthouse. Judge Harmon will sort this out." Judge William Harmon. Even in the basement holding cell, Devon had heard the name whispered like a curse word. The judge who seemed to take particular pleasure in maximum sentences. The judge whose courtroom was nicknamed the Pipeline because of how efficiently it fed young black men into the prison system. The judge who, rumor had it, had investments in private prisons, though nobody could prove it. 3 hours passed before they brought Devon up. 3 hours of his mother pacing in the hallway, calling everyone she could think of their pastor a cousin who was a paralegal, even Mr. Rodriguez who rushed over from the school. 3 hours while the Environmental Justice Committee waited in room 304 checking their watches and wondering where their star presenter had gone. The courtroom was smaller than Devon had imagined from TV shows. More cramped, more oppressive with wood paneling that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Judge Harmon sat behind his bench like a vulture on a perch, his black robes making him appear even larger than his considerable frame suggested. His face was weathered leather, stretched over sharp bones, and his eyes, Devon would never forget those eyes. They were the color of dirty ice, and they looked at Devon like he was already convicted. Devon Taylor, the judge read from a hastily prepared docket. 17 years old, brought a suspicious electronic device into a government building. The device was confiscated and is being examined by our security team. He looked up from the papers. "Young man, do you understand the seriousness of what you've done?" "Your Honor, I was invited here. I have the letter from the Environmental Justice Committee. The device is a science project." A science project. Judge Harmon's voice was flat disbelieving. "You expect this court to believe that a teenager from Riverside Heights—" He pronounced the name of Devon's neighborhood like it left a bad taste in his mouth, built a sophisticated electronic device for a science project. "Yes, Your Honor, I can explain exactly how it works. It measures particulate matter in the air, specifically PM2.5 and PM10 particles. I've been collecting data for 6 months showing that our neighborhood has air quality readings that exceed federal safety standards by—" Silence. The gavel came down hard. "I didn't ask for a science lesson, boy." Boy. The word hung in the air like a slap. Devon saw his mother flinch in the gallery. "Your Honor," a voice spoke up from the back. Devon turned to see a woman in a wrinkled suit standing up. "Patricia Chen, Public Defender's Office. I'd like to represent Mr. Taylor." "This is a preliminary hearing, Ms. Chen. The defendant hasn't been formally charged yet." "Then why is he in handcuffs?" "Your Honor, if he hasn't been charged, he should be released." Judge Harmon's eyes narrowed. "Ms. Chen, are you new to my courtroom?" 6 months, Your Honor." "Then let me educate you on how things work here. This young man brought what security describes as a potential weapon into a government building. Until we determine his intentions. His intentions were to present his science project to the Environmental Justice Committee, Your Honor. They're still waiting for him in room 304. We can verify this with a simple phone call." "I'll decide what we can verify, Counselor." Judge Harmon's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. "And right now, what I see is a pattern. Another young man from Riverside Heights thinking the rules don't apply to him." "What pattern?" Patricia Chen stepped forward. "Devon Taylor has no criminal record. He's an honor student with a 4.0 GPA. He's already been accepted early admission to 3 universities, which proves he's smart enough to know better." The judge turned his attention back to Devon. "You know what I think, Mr. Taylor? I think you're too smart for your own good. I think you brought that device here as some kind of statement. Maybe to embarrass this court, maybe to make some political point about your neighborhood. Your Honor, that's pure speculation. One more word, Ms. Chen, and you'll be held in contempt." The public defender's jaw clenched, but she remained silent. Devon felt something building in his chest. Not fear anymore. Something else. Anger. Clean, righteous anger. 6 months he'd worked on that project. 6 months of waking up at 5 a.m. to check his sensors before school. 6 months of carefully documenting every reading, creating spreadsheets, building graphs, writing code to analyze the patterns. 6 months of proof that his neighborhood was being slowly poisoned by the industrial plants that bordered it, while neighborhoods like the one Judge Harmon probably lived in enjoyed clean air and property values that climbed year after year. Your Honor. Devon said, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. May I say something? You may not. Please, Your Honor. Just let me explain what the project... I said silence. The gavel came down again. You know what your problem is. Mr. Taylor, you don't know your place. You come into my courthouse with your suspicious device and your attitude thinking you're special. Thinking you're different from all the other kids from Riverside Heights who end up in front of me. I am different. The words escaped before Devon could stop them. The courtroom went silent. Even the court reporter's fingers paused over her keys. Judge Harmon leaned forward slowly. What did you say? Devon's mother was shaking her head frantically from the gallery, but Devon couldn't stop now. I said I am different. Your Honor, I'm different because I'm trying to help my community. I'm different because I use science and data instead of violence. I'm different because I still believe the system can work even when... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Even when it seems designed to work against people like me. People like you. The judge's voice was silk over steel. And what kind of people would that be, Mr. Taylor? Devon knew it was a trap, but he walked into it anyway. Poor people, Your Honor. People from neighborhoods that don't matter to anyone except at election time. People whose kids have asthma at 3 times the state average because of air pollution that nobody wants to talk about. So you are here to make a political statement. I'm here to present scientific facts. Facts. Judge Harmon smiled, and it was the coldest thing Devon had ever seen. Let me give you some facts, Mr. Taylor. Fact, you brought an unauthorized electronic device into a government building. Fact, when questioned, you became belligerent. I wasn't belligerent, I was explaining. Fact, you're now interrupting a judge. Fact, your device could be construed as a weapon or a tool for terrorism. Terrorism. Grace Taylor couldn't contain herself anymore. Your Honor, please. He's just a child trying to do good. Remove her from my courtroom. No. Devon started forward as 2 bailiffs moved toward his mother, but the guard behind him grabbed his arms. Your Honor, this is unconscionable. Patricia Chen was on her feet again. You're traumatizing a family over a science project. That's it, Ms. Chen. Contempt of court. Bailiff, take her into custody. The courtroom erupted. Grace Taylor was being escorted out, calling her son's name. Patricia Chen was arguing with the bailiffs, even as they placed her in handcuffs. And through it all, Judge Harmon sat like a king on his throne, watching the chaos with satisfaction. Order, I will have order. The gavel pounded repeatedly until the room quieted, though the tension remained electric. Mr. Taylor, given the serious nature of the potential charges and your obvious lack of respect for this court, I'm inclined to... Your Honor. A new voice cut through the chaos. Everyone turned to see a man in an expensive suit standing at the courtroom door. Devon didn't recognize him, but the way everyone else reacted, including Judge Harmon, suggested he was someone important. Senator Whitfield. The judge's demeanor changed instantly. I didn't realize you were in the building today. I was here for a meeting when I heard about the commotion. Senator James Whitfield walked down the aisle with the confidence of someone who owned every room he entered. This is the young man who was supposed to present to the Environmental Justice Committee, isn't it? You know about his presentation? Judge Harmon seemed suddenly uncertain. Of course I know. I chair the committee. The senator studied Devon with interest. Though I have to say, I'm curious why he's in handcuffs instead of room 304. There was a security concern, Senator. The device he brought? The air quality monitor. Yes, I've heard about it. Quite impressive work for someone so young. The senator's smile didn't reach his eyes. In fact, I was particularly interested in seeing the data he's collected. Something about unusual readings in certain neighborhoods. Devon felt a chill run down his spine. There was something about the way the senator said unusual readings that set off every alarm in his head. Perhaps, Senator Whitfield continued, we should handle this matter more quietly. No need for formal charges. The young man clearly just made an error in judgment bringing his device through security without proper clearance. Of course, Senator. Judge Harmon's agreement was immediate. If you vouch for him... Oh, I wouldn't go that far. The senator's smile widened. But I do think Mr. Taylor and I should have a conversation about his project. In private. I'm sure we can come to an understanding about what data is appropriate to share publicly and what might be misinterpreted. Devon understood then. The senator wasn't there to help him. He was there to bury the project, to make sure whatever Devon had discovered never saw the light of day. I want my lawyer present for any conversation, Devon said. Your lawyer is currently indisposed. Judge Harmon noted with satisfaction, referring to Patricia Chen, who'd been removed for contempt. Then I want my mother. Your mother has been escorted from the building for causing a disturbance. Then I'm not saying anything. Senator Whitfield's friendly mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something harder underneath. Mr. Taylor, you're not in a position to make demands. Judge Harmon could easily find probable cause to hold you pending a full investigation. That could take weeks, months even. Is that really what you want? What I want, Devon said slowly, is to present my findings to the Environmental Justice Committee as I was invited to do. That invitation has been rescinded, the senator said flatly. Your behavior today has shown you're not mature enough to participate in adult proceedings. My behavior? I've done nothing but try to explain. You've disrupted courthouse security, caused a scene, and shown contempt for judicial authority. Senator Whitfield turned to Judge Harmon. Your Honor, perhaps some time in juvenile detention would help Mr. Taylor understand the gravity of his situation. No trial. No formal charges. Devon couldn't believe what he was hearing. You can't just lock me up. Actually. Judge Harmon leaned back in his chair. I can. For your own safety and the safety of the community, I can order you held for psychiatric evaluation. Bringing a suspicious device into a courthouse, the paranoid rantings about conspiracies in your neighborhood. They're not rantings. I have data, 6 months of data showing what Mr. Taylor... The senator's voice was sharp now. What exactly do you think you've discovered? Devon looked between the judge and the senator, understanding flooding through him. They knew. They already knew what he'd found. That's why they were here. That's why this was happening. The industrial zone on the east side of Riverside Heights, Devon said quietly. The one that's supposed to be operating within EPA guidelines. It's not. The particulate matter readings are 3 times the legal limit during night shifts. Between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m., when the oversight inspectors aren't around, they're burning something that's poisoning our air. The courtroom was silent. Senator Whitfield's face had gone pale. And you have proof of this? The senator asked. 6 months of time-stamped data from 12 different sensors I placed around the neighborhood, plus photos of the black smoke that only appears at night, plus hospital records showing the spike in emergency room visits for respiratory issues that correlate exactly with the nights when the readings are highest. Hospital records. Judge Harmon leaned forward. How did you obtain hospital records? They're public health statistics. Anyone can request them. I cross-referenced them with my air quality data and found a correlation coefficient of 0.89. That's almost perfect correlation. Senator Whitfield pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. Your Honor, I think we need to take a brief recess. Granted. 15 minutes. As the senator strode out, he paused next to Devon. You have no idea what you're meddling with, boy. Some stones are better left unturned. Is that a threat, Senator? Whitfield smiled coldly. It's a kindness. The last kindness you're likely to receive if you continue down this path." The senator left, and Devon was taken to a small holding room next to the courtroom. His guard, a young black bailiff named Officer Jackson, looked conflicted as he locked the door. "Kid," he said quietly through the bars, "you need to be careful. You're stepping on some powerful toes." "I'm just trying to help my neighborhood." "I know. I grew up in Riverside Heights too. My little sister has asthma, bad, but Judge Harmon and Senator Whitfield, they're connected to people you don't want to cross." "Connected how?" Officer Jackson looked around nervously. "The senator's brother-in-law owns Titan Industries, the company that runs that industrial zone you've been monitoring." Devon's heart sank. "And Judge Harmon?" "Major shareholder. Plus, he owns half the rental properties in Riverside Heights. Properties that would lose value if word got out about the air quality. So they're poisoning us and profiting from it." "Keep your voice down." Officer Jackson glanced nervously at the door. "Look, I shouldn't be telling you this, but your public defender, Ms. Chen, she's good people. She's filed an emergency appeal already. Help might be coming, but you need to survive the next hour first." "What do you mean, survive?" Before Officer Jackson could answer, the door burst open. Senator Whitfield entered with two men in suits who screamed federal authority. "Mr. Taylor," the senator said smoothly, "these gentlemen are from Homeland Security. It seems your device has raised some red flags in their databases. Something about the components you used matching those in certain explosive devices." "That's impossible. They're just sensors and Arduino boards." "Nevertheless, they'll need to examine your device, and all your data, and your computer at home. In fact, they have a warrant to search your entire house." One of the agents held up a paper. Devon couldn't read it from where he sat, but the official seals looked real enough. "You can't do this," Devon said, but his voice sounded small even to himself. "It's already done," Senator Whitfield said. "By the time they're finished, your project will be contaminated evidence in a federal investigation. Your data will be sealed, and if you're very, very lucky, you'll only spend a few years in juvenile detention instead of being tried as an adult for domestic terrorism. Terrorism for measuring air quality. For building what could be construed as a chemical weapon detection system. Post 9/11, the laws are quite strict about unauthorized surveillance equipment near critical infrastructure. The industrial zone isn't critical infrastructure. It is now." The senator's smile was triumphant. "As of 10 minutes ago, Titan Industries has been designated a vital component of the national defense supply chain. Retroactively, of course." Devon felt the walls closing in. They'd thought of everything. Every angle covered, every escape route blocked. His project, his data, his proof, it would all disappear into some federal evidence locker, never to be seen again. And he'd disappear too, just another statistic from Riverside Heights, another cautionary tale about what happens when you don't know your place. 5 minutes until court resumes, Officer Jackson announced from the doorway. "Time enough," Senator Whitfield said. He pulled out a paper and placed it in front of Devon. "Sign this." "What is it?" "A confession that you built your device as part of a school prank that got out of hand. You'll admit to poor judgment, do some community service, and this all goes away. No federal investigation, no terrorism charges, no prison time. And my project will be destroyed naturally, all data erased, and you'll sign an NDA agreeing never to discuss your findings or conduct similar research in the future." Devon read through the document. It was more than a confession, it was a complete surrender. Everything he'd worked for, everything he'd discovered erased, as if it never existed. "And if I don't sign?" Senator Whitfield leaned back. "Then Judge Harmon will have no choice but to follow the recommendations of these federal agents. Given the serious nature of the potential charges and your obvious flight risk, you did mention having college acceptances, didn't you? He'll set bail at a level your family could never afford. You'll sit in detention for months, maybe years, waiting for a trial. Your college acceptances will be withdrawn. Your future will evaporate. And in the end, you'll likely be convicted anyway. Because let's face it, who's a jury going to believe a teenager from Riverside Heights with a suspicious device or federal agents protecting national security? This is extortion. This is reality. The senator's mask finally dropped completely, revealing the cold calculation beneath. You're 17 years old, Mr. Taylor. You think you're going to change the world with your little science project? I've been running this state for 20 years. Judge Harmon has been sending kids like you to prison for 15. The system isn't broken, it works exactly as designed. And you're about to learn what happens to people who try to expose that design. Devon looked at the confession. His hand moved toward the pen. Don't do it. Everyone turned. Patricia Chen stood in the doorway, flanked by two other lawyers. Despite having been arrested for contempt, she was back, and she looked furious. Ms. Chen, you're supposed to be in custody. Judge Harmon appeared behind her, his face red with anger. I posted bail, and I brought friends. She gestured to the lawyers beside her. This is David Martinez from the ACLU, and Sarah Washington from the Environmental Defense Fund. We're all very interested in Mr. Taylor's case. This is a matter of national security. One of the federal agents started. Really? Sarah Washington stepped forward. Because I just got off the phone with the actual Department of Homeland Security. They have no record of any investigation into Devon Taylor or his science project. So who exactly are you, gentlemen? The two agents exchanged glances. Our credentials are classified. Convenient. David Martinez pulled out his phone. I'm calling the FBI field office right now to verify your identities. I'm sure they'll be very interested to know about people impersonating federal agents. You're making a mistake. Senator Whitfield stood up. You have no idea who you're dealing with. On the contrary, Senator. Patricia Chen smiled. We know exactly who we're dealing with. Did you know your conversation in this room was being recorded? Officer Jackson here was kind enough to activate his body camera before you entered. All eyes turned to Officer Jackson, who stood straighter despite the senator's withering glare. Just following protocol, sir. All interactions with detained minors must be recorded. Senator Whitfield's face went from red to white. That recording is inadmissible. In court, maybe. Sarah Washington agreed. But the court of public opinion. The media, I think they'd be very interested to hear a sitting senator threatening a 17-year-old honor student for documenting illegal pollution levels. The room erupted. Judge Harmon was shouting about contempt and conspiracy. The fake federal agents were backing toward the door. Senator Whitfield was on his phone, presumably calling his own lawyers. And through it all, Devon sat in stunned silence, watching his case transform from a personal nightmare into a public battleground. Your Honor, Patricia Chen raised her voice above the chaos. I move for immediate dismissal of all charges against my client and his immediate release. Denied. Judge Harmon slammed his gavel. This court is in recess until— Actually, Your Honor, another voice interrupted. A woman in a judge's robes entered the courtroom. I'm Judge Elizabeth Carter from the State Appeals Court. I've been monitoring this situation, and I'm ordering an immediate stay of all proceedings in this case, pending a full judicial review. You can't do that. This is my courtroom. Not anymore. Judge Carter held up an official document. This is an emergency order transferring jurisdiction. Judge Harmon, you're hereby recused from this case due to obvious conflicts of interest, specifically your financial holdings in both Titan Industries and residential properties in the affected area. How did you? Mr. Taylor's science teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, is quite resourceful. While you were all focused on intimidating a child, he was at the courthouse pulling public records. Your financial disclosures make for interesting reading, Judge Harmon. As do yours, Senator Whitfield. The senator straightened his tie. This isn't over. You're right, Judge Carter agreed. It's just beginning. Mr. Taylor, you're free to go. and I believe the Environmental Justice Committee is still waiting to hear your presentation. Officer Jackson, please return Mr. Taylor's project to him. It's in the evidence locker. Then retrieve it, now. As Officer Jackson hurried out, Devon finally found his voice. My data! They said they were going to destroy it. Your data is safe. Mr. Rodriguez entered the courtroom, carrying Devon's laptop. I uploaded everything to multiple cloud servers the moment I heard you'd been detained. 3 universities have already requested copies for peer review. Your findings are going to be studied, verified, and published, Devon. They can't stop it now. Senator Whitfield stormed out without another word, his fake federal agents trailing behind him. Judge Harmon remained seated at his bench, looking smaller, somehow diminished as Judge Carter stood before him. William, she said quietly, I suggest you contact your attorney. The State Attorney General's office will be opening an investigation into your sentencing patterns, particularly regarding defendants from certain zip codes. The correlation is troubling. Devon watched Judge Harmon's face crumble. The man who'd seemed so powerful an hour ago now looked like what he was, a corrupt official whose crimes were finally catching up with him. Officer Jackson returned with Devon's project case. It's damaged, he said apologetically. They weren't gentle with it. Devon opened the case. Several sensors were cracked, wires disconnected, the main board bent. 6 months of work partially destroyed, but the memory cards were intact. The data survived. We can rebuild it, Mr. Rodriguez said, putting a hand on Devon's shoulder. Together. And this time, we'll make it even better. Patricia Chen approached Devon as his handcuffs were finally removed. You did something brave today, Devon. Speaking truth to power isn't easy, especially when power fights back. But you stood your ground. I was terrified, Devon admitted, rubbing his wrists. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's continuing despite it. She handed him a card. When you get to college, if you ever think about law school, call me. We need more lawyers who understand what real justice looks like. Judge Carter approached. Mr. Taylor, are you prepared to give your presentation? I know it's been a traumatic morning, but the committee is still assembled, and I think they need to hear what you have to say. Devon looked at his damaged project, then at the faces around him, his teachers, his lawyers, the judge who'd stood up for him. I need a few minutes to reconnect some wires, but yes, I'm ready. Good. Officer Jackson will escort you to room 304. And Mr. Taylor, what you've done here today, documenting environmental crimes, standing up to corruption, this is just the beginning. Change doesn't come from one person's actions. It comes from inspiring others to act. Your data, your courage, your refusal to be silenced. You've started something that won't be stopped. As Devon walked toward the elevator, his damaged project in his arms, he passed the holding cells where other young men waited for their turn, before Judge Harmon. They looked at him through the bars, some with hope, some with skepticism, all with a question in their eyes. How did you beat them? He didn't have an answer yet. The fight wasn't over. Senator Whitfield would regroup. Judge Harmon would use every connection he had to avoid consequences, and Titan Industries would hire the best lawyers money could buy to dispute his findings. But something had shifted. The stones they'd warned him not to turn had been flipped, revealing the rot underneath for all to see. The elevator doors opened, and Devon stepped inside with Officer Jackson. Thank you, he said quietly. For the body camera, for the warning, for everything. My little sister, Officer Jackson replied. The one with asthma. She's the same age as you, wants to be a scientist too. Maybe now she'll get to breathe clean air while she studies. The elevator rose toward the 3rd floor, toward room 304, toward the presentation that would change everything. But as the floors ticked by, Devon's phone buzzed in his pocket. He'd forgotten it was even there, confiscated, and returned without fanfare in the chaos. A text from an unknown number. You think you've won. This was just round 1. J.H. Judge Harmon. Even facing investigation, even stripped of this case, the man wouldn't give up. Devon deleted the message and squared his shoulders. Let them come. He had data, he had truth, and now he had allies. The elevator dinged. 3rd floor. The doors opened to reveal a crowded hallway. Word had spread somehow. Reporters, activists, concerned citizens all gathered to hear what Devon Taylor had to say. The story that started with a 17-year-old and his broken air quality monitor had become something bigger. Mr. Rodriguez was right, they could rebuild the device. But more importantly, they could rebuild trust in the idea that one person armed with facts and courage could stand against corruption and win. Not a complete victory, not yet, but a beginning. Devon walked through the crowd toward room 304. Behind him on the 1st floor, Judge Harmon was cleaning out his chambers, knowing that his next court appearance would be as a defendant. Senator Whitfield was in his office watching his career crumble as journalists connected dots between his legislation and his brother-in-law's profits. And somewhere in Riverside Heights, children were playing outside breathing poisoned air, not knowing that a 17-year-old with a science project was about to change their world. The door to room 304 opened. The Environmental Justice Committee sat waiting, their faces expectant. Devon set his damaged project on the presentation table and began connecting the surviving sensors. His hands were steady now, the trembling gone. He looked up at the committee members, some the same people who'd been willing to let him be railroaded an hour ago, now forced to listen by the weight of public attention. "Good morning," Devon began, his voice carrying the strength of someone who'd faced down power and survived. "My name is Devon Taylor, and I'm here to talk about the air our children breathe. But first, I need to tell you about what just happened downstairs, because the attempt to silence this presentation is part of the same system that's poisoning our community." He pulled up his first slide, a map of Riverside Heights, with air quality readings overlaid in angry reds and oranges. The committee members leaned forward. The reporters raised their cameras. The truth, so long buried, was about to break surface. 6 months ago, Devon continued, I started asking a simple question: why do so many kids in my neighborhood have asthma? The answer led me to a conspiracy of environmental racism, judicial corruption, and corporate greed that goes all the way to the state capitol. And I have the data to prove it. As he spoke, Devon thought about Judge Harmon's threat. Senator Whitfield's warning, the system designed to crush people like him before they could speak truths like this. They'd almost succeeded. If not for Officer Jackson's conscience, Patricia Chen's courage, Mr. Rodriguez's determination, and Judge Carter's intervention, he'd be in a cell right now. His project destroyed, his future erased. But he wasn't in a cell. He was here speaking truth to a room full of people who could no longer pretend they didn't know. The industrial zone was poisoning Riverside Heights. The judge who sent so many young black men to prison was profiting from their neighborhood suffering. The senator who claimed to represent them was actively working to keep them sick and silent. The Constitution promises equal protection under law, Devon said, clicking to his final slide, a photo of children playing in a Riverside Heights playground while black smoke billowed from Titan Industries in the background. But equal protection means nothing if the law itself is corrupted. If judges own stock in the companies poisoning us, if senators rewrite regulations to protect their families' profits, if a 17-year-old with a science project is threatened with life in prison for documenting the truth. He paused, looking directly at each committee member. So I ask you, what are you going to do about it? Because I've done my part. I've collected the data, survived the intimidation, and delivered this presentation despite every attempt to stop me. Now it's your turn. The whole state is watching. What are you going to do? The room was silent. Then slowly, one person started clapping. Then another. Then the entire room erupted in applause. Not the polite golf clap of political gatherings, but real, genuine appreciation for courage in the face of power. But Devon didn't smile. Not yet. Applause was easy. Action was hard. And until the air in Riverside Heights was clean, until Judge Harmon faced justice for the lives he'd destroyed, until Senator Whitfield's corruption was fully exposed, the work wasn't done. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was his mother. Watching the live stream. So proud of you, baby. Dad would have been too. Devon thought of his father dead, 3 years now, from lung cancer, despite never smoking a day in his life. Another casualty of Riverside Heights' poisoned air, though they hadn't known it at the time. Couldn't prove it. Now they could. Mr. Taylor, the committee chair finally spoke. Your findings are disturbing. We'll need to verify your data, of course, but if even half of what you've presented is accurate, we're looking at criminal violations of environmental law, civil rights violations, and a conspiracy that demands immediate action. Verify away, Devon said, pulling out a USB drive. Here's everything. 6 months of time-stamped readings, hospital records, photo evidence, and as of this morning, video testimony of Senator Whitfield attempting to coerce me into burying this data. The committee chair took the drive like it might explode. Perhaps in a way it would. The explosion would be political, judicial, environmental, but explosion nonetheless. As the committee began discussing next steps, Devon quietly packed up his damaged project. He had chemistry class that afternoon, and his mother would want him home for dinner. Life went on even after you'd faced down corrupt judges and senators before lunch. But as he walked toward the door, the committee chair called out, Mr. Taylor, where are you going? School, Devon replied simply. I've already missed 3 periods. My calculus teacher doesn't accept I was being threatened with life imprisonment as an excuse for missing homework. More laughter, but Devon was serious. The fight for justice was important, but so was maintaining the life that made the fight worthwhile. He was still 17, still had college applications to finish, friends to hang out with, a life to live beyond this moment of confrontation. Before you go, the chair said, I want you to know that we'll be recommending a full investigation, not just of the environmental violations, but of the attempt to suppress your findings. What happened to you this morning? It can't be allowed to stand. Devon nodded. Respectfully, sir, what happened to me this morning has been happening to kids from my neighborhood for years. The only difference is I had evidence and allies. How many others were railroaded by Judge Harmon with no one to speak for them? How many are sitting in prison right now on trumped-up charges because they didn't have a Patricia Chen or a Judge Carter to intervene? The uncomfortable silence that followed told Devon everything he needed to know. His case was exceptional, not in its injustice, but in its exposure. The system that had tried to destroy him was still destroying others, quietly, efficiently, out of public view. Then we have even more work to do, the chair admitted. Mr. Taylor, would you be willing to testify before the state legislature? Your experience combined with your environmental data could be the catalyst for real reform. Yes, Devon said without hesitation. But I have conditions. The chair raised an eyebrow. You're negotiating with us. I'm protecting my community. Any hearing has to include testimony from Riverside Heights residents who've been affected by the pollution. Any investigation has to examine Judge Harmon's entire sentencing history, not just my case. And any reform has to include provisions for environmental monitoring in all low-income neighborhoods, not just mine. That's ambitious. That's justice. Devon shouldered his backpack. The minimum acceptable version of it anyway. As he left room 304, Devon passed Officer Jackson in the hallway. The bailiff gave him a small nod, the acknowledgement of one Riverside Heights kid to another, both trying to do right in a system designed to compromise them. Stay safe out there, Officer Jackson said quietly. This isn't over. People like Harmon and Whitfield, they don't go down easy. They'll come at you sideways now through your family, your school, anywhere they think you're vulnerable. I know. Devon thought of the threatening text deleted but not forgotten. But running away won't make me any safer. At least now people are watching. Yeah, Officer Jackson agreed. The whole world is watching. No pressure, kid. Devon actually laughed for the first time that day. After this morning, everything else is going to feel like easy mode. But as he walked through the courthouse lobby, past the metal detectors that had started this whole confrontation, Devon knew Officer Jackson was right. This was just the beginning. Senator Whitfield had connections throughout the state government. Judge Harmon had allies in law enforcement. Titan Industries had enough money to buy whatever verdict they wanted if this ever went to trial. His phone rang. Unknown number. Devon almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Mr. Taylor. The voice was female, professional, unfamiliar. This is Rebecca Martinez from the Washington Post. We've been following your story. Would you be available for an interview? I need to check with my mom first. Of course, but Mr. Taylor, what you've uncovered goes beyond Riverside Heights. We've found similar patterns in 12 other states, industrial zones, violating emission standards in predominantly black and brown neighborhoods, with local officials profiting from the arrangement. Your data could be the key to exposing a national scandal. Devon stopped walking. National. Judge Harmon and Senator Whitfield aren't unique. They're part of a network. Your courage in exposing them has inspired others to come forward. We're getting calls from whistleblowers, other young scientists like yourself, who've been threatened or silenced. You've started something, Mr. Taylor. After taking the reporter's information and promising to call back, Devon stood in the courthouse lobby processing what he'd just learned. His local fight had revealed a national problem. His small science project had uncovered a vast conspiracy. His refusal to be silenced had given voice to others. But with greater impact came greater danger. If this truly was nationwide, if billions of dollars and hundreds of political careers were at stake, then the morning's confrontation had been just a skirmish. The real war was coming. Devon's phone buzzed with another text, this one from Mr. Rodriguez. News van's at school. Principal wants to see you when you get back. You're either getting a medal or expelled. Possibly both. Despite everything, Devon smiled. Let them come, the reporters, the politicians, the corporate lawyers. He had something more powerful than their money or connections. He had data. He had truth. And now, apparently, he had a movement. As he pushed through the courthouse doors into the afternoon sun, Devon thought about the morning's events. In a few hours, he'd gone from honor student to criminal defendant to environmental hero. He'd faced down a corrupt judge, exposed a senator's crimes, and lived to tell about it. But heroes Devon was learning were just ordinary people who refused to accept extraordinary injustice. He wasn't special because he was brave. He was brave because he had no choice. The kids in Riverside Heights deserved clean air. The young men in Judge Harmon's pipeline deserved fair trials. The truth deserved to be heard. His phone rang again. This time, it was his mother. Devon, baby, are you okay? I'm okay, Mom. Walking back to school now. The news is saying you're some kind of hero. They're calling you the boy who stood up to corruption. That's a terrible headline. Maybe, but it's true. Her voice was proud but worried. Devon, what you did today. Your father would have been so proud. But baby, these people you've exposed, they're dangerous. I know. Do you really? Because Judge Harmon has sent hundreds of boys to prison. Senator Whitfield has destroyed careers, ruined lives. They won't just accept this. Devon thought about his father dying slowly from cancer while they lived downwind of Titan Industries. How many others had died the same way? How many more would die if nothing changed? Mom, remember what Dad used to say. Evil thrives when good people do nothing. I remember. Well, I'm doing something. It's scary and it's dangerous, but it's necessary. And I'm not alone. Ms. Chen, Judge Carter. Mr. Rodriguez, there are good people fighting with me. His mother was quiet for a moment. Come home after school. I'm making your favorite dinner. And Devon? We need to talk about security. The lawyers think we might need protection. Protection. Just for a while, until things calm down. But Devon knew things wouldn't calm down. Not really. Even if Judge Harmon went to prison, even if Senator Whitfield resigned, even if Titan Industries was forced to clean up its act, the system that created them would remain. The system that valued profit over people, that saw black neighborhoods as sacrifice zones, that treated justice as a commodity to be bought and sold. Still, Devon had learned something important that morning. The system was powerful, but it wasn't invincible. It relied on silence, on fear, on the assumption that people like him would accept their place rather than challenge it. But he hadn't accepted it. He'd fought back with science and truth, and he'd won a battle, if not the war. As he approached his school, Devon saw the news vans Mr. Rodriguez had mentioned. Reporters were interviewing students asking about their classmate who'd stood up to corruption. Some kids he barely knew were claiming to be his best friends. Others were saying they always knew he'd do something important. Devon slipped around the side of the building, entering through the gym door. He made it halfway to his chemistry class before Principal Adams intercepted him. "Mr. Taylor, my office, now." The principal's office felt different from Judge Harmon's courtroom, but carried its own weight of authority. Principal Adams sat behind her desk, studying Devon with an expression he couldn't read. "Do you know what you've done?" she asked finally. "Presented scientific data about air quality. You've put this school in the national spotlight. We've had calls from CNN, the EPA, the Justice Department. The mayor wants to give you a medal. The school board wants to suspend you for causing a disruption. Which are you going to do?" Principal Adams leaned back. "Neither. I'm going to do what I should have done months ago when you first came to me with your concerns about air quality. I'm going to listen. Tell me everything from the beginning." So Devon told her. About the kids with inhalers, the hospital statistics, the late-night sensor readings. About Judge Harmon's threats and Senator Whitfield's corruption. About Officer Jackson's courage and Ms. Chen's determination. About the system designed to silence him and the people who'd helped him speak. When he finished, Principal Adams was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Taylor, I owe you an apology. When you first brought this to my attention, I told you to focus on your studies, not to rock the boat. I was wrong. You were trying to protect me." "No, I was trying to protect myself. This school gets funding from the state. Senator Whitfield sits on the education committee. I was afraid of what would happen if we challenged him." She stood looking out the window at the news vans. "But fear is how they control us, isn't it? Fear of losing our jobs, our funding, our freedom. You faced that fear and won." "I haven't won anything yet. The air is still poisoned. Judge Harmon is still free. Senator Whitfield is already spinning this as a misunderstanding. But people know now. That's the first step." Principal Adams turned back to him. "Mr. Taylor, I'm going to recommend you for the Presidential Scholar Award. What you've done using science to fight injustice, that's exactly what education should produce. Citizens who think critically and act courageously." "Thank you, ma'am." "Don't thank me. Just keep being yourself. Now get to class. You've already missed enough school for one day." As Devon headed to chemistry, his phone buzzed with notifications. The video of his presentation to the Environmental Justice Committee had gone viral. #Justice for Riverside Heights was trending. Environmental groups were calling for investigations. Civil rights organizations were demanding Judge Harmon's immediate removal from the bench. But in chemistry class, Devon tried to focus on normal teenage things. The periodic table molecular bonds, the girl 2 rows over, who smiled at him. For an hour, he wasn't the boy who stood up to corruption. He was just Devon, 17, and trying to balance chemical equations while his phone vibrated continuously in his pocket. After school, as he walked home through Riverside Heights, Devon noticed the difference. People were outside talking in groups, sharing their own stories of Judge Harmon's injustice, their own suspicions about the industrial zone. His data had given them permission to speak truths they'd kept silent for years. Mrs. Washington, whose son had been sent to prison by Judge Harmon 5 years ago for a first offense that should have resulted in probation, stopped Devon on the street. "Is it true? Is the judge really being investigated?" "Yes, ma'am. His whole record is under review." She started crying. "My boy. He might come home." "I don't know, ma'am, but people are looking into it." As he continued home, Devon realized the weight of what he'd started. It wasn't just about air quality anymore. It was about every injustice Judge Harmon had committed, every life Senator Whitfield had destroyed, every family broken by a system that saw them as disposable. His phone rang. Patricia Chen. "Devon, I wanted to give you a heads up. Judge Harmon has hired the best criminal defense attorney in the state, and Senator Whitfield is claiming the whole thing was a misunderstanding, that he was actually trying to help you." "Of course he is. But here's the good news. 3 more judges have recused themselves from cases involving Riverside Heights residents, citing potential conflicts of interest. Your case has them scared. They're realizing their financial ties might be exposed next." Good. And Devon's 67 cases that Judge Harmon presided over in the last 5 years are being reviewed for bias. 67 young men who might get a second chance at justice because of what you did today. After the call, Devon sat on his front steps watching the sun set over Riverside Heights. The air was visibly hazy, particulates catching the light in a way that would be beautiful if it weren't so toxic. Tomorrow, Titan Industries would still be pumping poison into the air, but maybe not for much longer. His mother came out and sat beside him. "The lawyers called. They want to prep you for the legislative testimony." "When?" "Next week. They're fast-tracking it because of the media attention." Devon nodded. A week to prepare to face the entire state legislature. A week to consolidate his data, perfect his presentation, and figure out how to convey the urgency of clean air to politicians who'd never had to worry about what their children breathed. "Mom, do you think Dad knew about the air, I mean? Is that why he pushed me so hard in science?" "Maybe. He always said knowledge was power, but only if you had the courage to use it." She put her arm around him. "You've got both, baby, knowledge and courage." As they sat together, a car pulled up. An expensive car, the kind that didn't usually appear in Riverside Heights. The window rolled down, and Senator Whitfield himself looked out. "Mr. Taylor, Ms. Taylor, might I have a word?" Devon's mother stood protective. "You need to leave, now." "I'm not here to threaten anyone. I'm here to negotiate." "There's nothing to negotiate," Devon said, standing beside his mother. "Isn't there? Your data is compelling, but data can be interpreted many ways. Titan Industries is prepared to install new filtration systems to comply with EPA standards going forward. In exchange, you stop pushing for historical accountability. Let them poison us for years, but promise to stop now and all is forgiven." Something like that. "No." "No." Senator Whitfield seemed genuinely surprised. "Do you understand what you're refusing? Titan Industries employs 3,000 people. If they're forced to pay damages, they'll declare bankruptcy. Those jobs will disappear. Your neighbors will suffer." "They're already suffering. At least now they'll know why." The senator's mask slipped, revealing the anger beneath. "You naive child. You think this is about right and wrong. This is about money and power. And you have neither." "I have the truth." "The truth." Senator Whitfield laughed bitterly. "The truth is that without Titan Industries, Riverside Heights dies. No jobs, no tax revenue, nothing. You'll be the boy who destroyed his own community." "No," Devon said firmly. "You destroyed it. Slowly, quietly, profitably. I'm just documenting the damage." The senator rolled up his window and drove away. But Devon knew the threat was real. Titan Industries did employ many people from Riverside Heights. If the company folded, families would suffer. But they were suffering already, just differently, more slowly, less visibly. That evening, as Devon worked on organizing his data for the legislative testimony, his phone rang with another unknown number. He almost didn't answer, tired of reporters and threats alike. But something made him pick up. "Hello. Devon Taylor." "Yes." "My name is Marcus Chen, Patricia's brother. I'm calling from Stanford's Environmental Engineering Department. We've reviewed your data. It's remarkable work for someone your age. We'd like to offer you a full scholarship starting next fall." Devon nearly dropped the phone. I haven't even formally applied yet." "Consider this your application. What you've done, the methodology, the courage to pursue truth despite opposition, that's exactly what we look for. Plus, we want to expand on your work. Create a nationwide network of air quality monitors in underserved communities. You want to scale up my project. We want you to lead the scale-up, with proper resources and institutional support. What do you say?" Devon thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "Yes, absolutely, yes." After the call, Devon sat back overwhelmed. This morning, he'd been facing life in prison. Tonight, he had a full scholarship to one of the best universities in the country. The whiplash was dizzying. But there was still work to do. The legislative testimony loomed. Judge Harmon was building his defense. Senator Whitfield was marshaling his political allies. And Titan Industries lawyers were undoubtedly preparing to discredit Devon's data by any means necessary. Devon opened his laptop and began writing his testimony. Not just the scientific facts, but the human story. The asthmatic children, the elderly with oxygen tanks, the families who'd lost loved ones to lung disease, the system that prioritized profit over their lives, the corruption that kept it all hidden until a 17-year-old with homemade sensors and stubborn determination refused to be silenced. As he typed, Devon thought about Judge Harmon's words that morning. "You don't know your place." The judge had been right, but not in the way he'd meant. Devon didn't know his place because he refused to accept the place society had assigned him. He refused to be a statistic, a victim, a silent sufferer of injustice. His phone buzzed. A text from Officer Jackson. "Proud of you, kid. My sister's already breathing easier knowing someone's fighting for her." Then another from Mr. Rodriguez. "National Science Foundation wants to fund your research. We're talking real money, Devon. Enough to put sensors in every neighborhood that needs them." And another from a number he didn't recognize. "My son was sentenced by Judge Harmon 3 years ago. 10 years for a first offense. Because of you, his case is being reviewed. Thank you. A grateful mother." Devon realized then that his fight had become bigger than just his own story. He'd become a symbol, a catalyst, a spark that had lit fires in hearts that had long ago given up on justice. The responsibility was overwhelming, but so was the support. His mother appeared in his doorway. "It's getting late. You should rest." "Almost done with my testimony." She came in and read over his shoulder. "This is powerful, Devon, but you know they'll come at you hard during questioning." "Let them. I have data. I have facts. I have truth." "And you have us," she reminded him. "The whole community is behind you. Whatever happens next, you're not facing it alone." As Devon finally closed his laptop and prepared for bed, he thought about the journey from morning to night. 12 hours ago, he'd been a teenager with a science project. Now, he was at the center of a movement for environmental justice, judicial reform, and political accountability. But at his core, he was still the same person, someone who asked questions, gathered data, and refused to accept, because that's how it is, as an answer. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new battles. But tonight, for the first time in months, the weight of his secret knowledge had lifted. The truth was out. The fight was public. And change, real change, finally seemed possible. The last thing Devon did before sleeping was check his air quality sensors, still faithfully recording data despite everything. The readings were still in the red zone, dangerous, toxic, unacceptable. But now, people were watching those readings. Scientists, journalists, legislators, ordinary citizens who'd been ignored for too long. Judge Harmon had meant to break him. Senator Whitfield had tried to buy him. The system had attempted to silence him. They'd all failed. Because Devon Taylor knew exactly who he was, a young black man from Riverside Heights who'd used science to speak truth to power. And he was just getting started. The week passed in a blur of preparation, and now Devon stood outside the state capitol building, his hands steady despite the magnitude of what lay ahead. Patricia Chen walked beside him, reviewing notes one final time, while news cameras tracked their every movement. The marble steps seemed to stretch endlessly upward, each one taking him closer to a confrontation that would determine not just his future, but the future of every family breathing poison in Riverside Heights. "Remember," Patricia said quietly, as they climbed, "they'll try to discredit you personally when they can't discredit your data. Stay calm, stick to the facts, and don't let them bait you into emotional responses." Devon nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. That morning he'd received another text from Judge Harmon despite the restraining order Patricia had filed. Just 4 words: "You'll regret this, boy." The threat should have scared him, but instead it strengthened his resolve. Men like Harmon only threatened when they were cornered. The legislative chamber was packed beyond capacity. Environmental activists, Riverside Heights residents, representatives from Titan Industries, and what seemed like every journalist in the state had gathered for what the media was calling the testimony that could change everything. Devon spotted his mother in the gallery sitting between Mr. Rodriguez and Officer Jackson, who'd taken personal time to attend. Senator Rebecca Hayes, who chaired the Environmental Committee, called the session to order. Unlike Senator Whitfield, who sat 3 seats down, looking like he'd swallowed something bitter, Hayes had a reputation for fairness. But fairness didn't mean friendly, and her first question cut straight to the bone. "Mr. Taylor, you're 17 years old. What makes you think your amateur science project carries more weight than decades of professional environmental monitoring?" Devon had expected this. Senator Hayes, with respect, the professional monitoring you mention, has consistently failed to detect violations that occur between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. My amateur sensors don't sleep, they don't take breaks, they don't accept contributions from industrial lobbyists. A murmur ran through the chamber. Senator Whitfield's face darkened, but Devon continued. "Furthermore, my data has been validated by Stanford's Environmental Engineering Department, MIT's Climate Science Division, and the National Science Foundation. If my work is amateur, then these institutions have some explaining to do about their standards." "You're suggesting professional monitors have been deliberately negligent?" another senator asked. "I'm presenting data that shows a clear pattern. Every official monitoring session at Titan Industries has occurred during daylight hours with advance notice. My sensors show that emissions triple after 10 p.m. Either the professional monitors are incompetent or they're complicit. The data doesn't lie, Senator." Patricia touched his arm gently, a reminder to stay measured. But Devon was finding his rhythm now, the same clarity he'd felt when presenting scientific findings in class. "Let's examine your data more closely." Senator Whitfield finally spoke, his voice dripping with false concern. "You claim to have documented illegal emissions, but isn't it true that your sensors were built from salvaged parts? How can we trust measurements from equipment assembled by a teenager in his garage?" Devon pulled out his laptop, connecting it to the chamber's projection system. "I'm glad you asked, Senator. Let me show you the calibration data." The screen filled with graphs, timestamps, and certification stamps. Every sensor was calibrated against EPA-certified equipment borrowed from the state university. Here are the calibration certificates signed by Dr. James Morton, who literally wrote the textbook on atmospheric particle measurement. My garage equipment has a margin of error of less than 2%. The EPA's acceptable margin is 5%. But you're just one person, Whitfield pressed. How could you possibly monitor multiple locations simultaneously? I wasn't alone, Senator. Devon clicked to the next slide showing a map with dozens of dots. Once I shared my initial findings, 43 Riverside Heights residents volunteered to host sensors. Teachers, parents, even a few police officers who grew up in the neighborhood. We created a community network, all feeding data to a central database. The revelation caused another stir. This wasn't just one teenager's project anymore, it was a grassroots movement that had been building for months. This is vigilantism. Senator Whitfield declared, "Citizens taking law enforcement into their own hands." "No, Senator." Devon interrupted, something flashing in his eyes. "This is democracy. Citizens documenting crimes that law enforcement refuse to investigate, unless you're suggesting that measuring air quality is somehow illegal." "Don't be smart with me, boy." The word hung in the air like a poison cloud. Even Whitfield's allies shifted uncomfortably. Patricia stood immediately. "Senator Whitfield, I request that you address my client with the respect due to any witness before this committee." "I apologize," Whitfield said through gritted teeth. "Mr. Taylor, then. But my point stands. This amateur monitoring network could be manipulated, data could be falsified, which is why I implemented blockchain verification." The room went silent. Even Devon's supporters looked confused. "Blockchain?" Senator Hayes leaned forward, genuinely interested. "Explain." Devon clicked to a new slide showing a complex flowchart. Every reading from every sensor is immediately encrypted and added to a distributed ledger. Once recorded, the data cannot be altered without leaving a trace. The blockchain is maintained across 17 independent servers, including 3 at universities and 2 at environmental nonprofits. Any attempt to falsify data would be immediately detected. "You built a blockchain-verified environmental monitoring network?" Hayes asked, clearly impressed. "At 17. The technology exists. Senator, I just applied it to a new problem. The real question is why Titan Industries, with all their resources, hasn't implemented similar transparency measures." A representative from Titan Industries stood up from the gallery. "Because it's unnecessary and expensive. We comply with all regulations." "During business hours," Devon added. "What about the rest of the time?" "Order." Senator Hayes banged her gavel. "Mr. Taylor, do you have evidence of specific violations?" Devon clicked to a new slide, a graph showing emissions over time with clear spikes every night. October 15th, 2:47 a.m. Particulate emissions at 847% of legal limits. October 22nd, 1:15 a.m. Sulfur dioxide at 1,200% of legal limits. November 3rd, 3:33 a.m. Benzene emissions that would trigger an evacuation if they occurred during school hours. He clicked again. And here's the most damning evidence. Titan Industries' own internal communications provided by a whistleblower. The projection showed an email chain. Senator Whitfield went pale. From Thomas Whitfield, CEO of Titan Industries, to his management team. Continue night processing as discussed. Senator W. has assured me that monitoring will remain on current schedule. Riverside Heights residents lack the resources to prove anything. "How did you obtain those emails?" Whitfield demanded. "That's private correspondence, provided by a Titan Industries employee who chose conscience over paycheck," Devon replied. "Someone who got tired of watching children in their neighborhood develop asthma while their employer counted profits." The whistleblower revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Suddenly, this wasn't just about external monitoring. Titan Industries was rotting from within. "I motion for a recess," Senator Whitfield said quickly. "Denied," Senator Hayes responded. "Mr. Taylor, please continue." Devon clicked to a new section of his presentation. "Let's talk about the human cost. These aren't just numbers on a graph." The screen showed photographs, children with inhalers, elderly residents with oxygen tanks, a memorial wall at the local community center. Maria Santos, age 7, diagnosed with severe asthma despite no family history. Jerome Williams, age 62, lung cancer, despite never smoking. Sarah Chen, age 4, missed 47 days of school last year due to respiratory infections. He clicked through more photos, each one a face, a name, a story. These are the people Senator Whitfield called acceptable losses in another internal email. "That's taken out of context," Whitfield shouted. "Then provide the context, Senator. Explain to Maria's mother why her daughter's suffering is acceptable. Tell Mr. Williams' widow why profits matter more than lives." The chamber had gone quiet, except for the sound of someone crying in the gallery. Devon realized it was Mrs. Williams herself who'd come to hear the truth about her husband's death. "But there's more," Devon continued, his voice harder now. "The health impacts correlate with another pattern Judge Harmon's sentencing." Patricia touched his arm in warning, but Devon pressed on. "Using public court records, I've mapped the addresses of every young person Judge Harmon sentenced over the past 5 years. 93% lived within the contamination zone. Their average sentence was 340% longer than similar cases outside the zone." "What are you suggesting?" Senator Hayes asked carefully. "I'm not suggesting anything, Senator. I'm presenting data. Judge Harmon owns 17 rental properties in Riverside Heights. He has a financial interest in keeping the neighborhood poor and desperate. What better way than to remove young men from their families, destroy household incomes, and create a cycle of poverty that keeps rent low and tenants desperate?" "That's a serious accusation," Hayes said. "It's not an accusation, it's a statistical analysis. The correlation coefficient is 0.91. In scientific terms, that's almost impossible to occur by chance." Judge Harmon's lawyer stood up in the gallery. "This is character assassination. My client isn't even here to defend himself." "Because he's under federal investigation," Devon shot back, "for the exact patterns I've documented." The lawyer sat down, but Devon wasn't finished. He clicked to a new slide showing a complex web of connections. Titan Industries, Judge Harmon, Senator Whitfield. They're all connected through shell companies' shared investments and campaign contributions. This isn't just environmental racism, it's a criminal conspiracy. "Mr. Taylor," Senator Hayes said slowly, "are you prepared to provide all this evidence to federal investigators?" "I already have, Senator. 3 days ago, I gave everything to the FBI, the EPA, and the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division." The revelation sent the chamber into chaos. Reporters were typing frantically, senators were conferring with aides, and Senator Whitfield was on his phone, presumably with his lawyer. Furthermore, Devon raised his voice over the noise. "I've made all non-personal data publicly available on a website, riversideheightstruth.org. Anyone can download the sensor readings, the analysis, the blockchain verification. Transparency isn't just for demanding from others, it's for practicing ourselves." Senator Hayes called for order. "Mr. Taylor, what outcome are you seeking from this testimony?" Devon had prepared for this question, but now standing before the state's power structure, his prepared words felt insufficient. He thought of his father, of Mrs. Williams, of all the children who'd grow up breathing poison if nothing changed. "I want Titan Industries to either install proper filtration or shut down. I want Judge Harmon removed from the bench and every case he's touched reviewed. I want Senator Whitfield investigated for corruption. But most of all, I want environmental monitoring in every low-income neighborhood in this state. Because Riverside Heights isn't unique. We're just the ones who got lucky enough to have someone document it." "Lucky," Senator Whitfield scoffed. "You call destroying jobs and communities lucky. I call breathing clean air a human rights, Senator. If Titan Industries can't operate without poisoning children, they shouldn't operate at all." "You naive child." "Stop calling me child." Devon's composure finally cracked. "I'm old enough to be tried as an adult in Judge Harmon's courtroom. I'm old enough to be sentenced to life in prison for a science project. So I'm old enough to demand that my community stops being treated as expendable." The outburst brought applause from the gallery, quickly suppressed by Senator Hayes's gavel. "Mr. Taylor, I understand your frustration. Do you, Senator? Have you ever woken up at 3 a.m. because your little sister can't breathe? Have you watched your father die at 53 from lungs full of industrial waste? Have you been handcuffed for trying to prove your neighborhood is being poisoned?" Devon took a breath, regaining control. "I apologize for my tone, Senator Hayes, but understand that for me, this isn't politics, it's survival. Senator Hayes nodded slowly. Your passion is understandable, Mr. Taylor, and your data is compelling. This committee will need time to review everything you've presented. Time. Devon pulled out his phone and showed the screen to the committee. This is a live feed from my sensors. Right now, at 2:15 p.m., Titan Industries is within legal limits. But tonight, when you're all home with your families breathing clean air in your safe neighborhoods, those numbers will triple. And tomorrow morning, 43 more kids will wake up wheezing. How much time do they have, Senator? Before Hayes could respond, the chamber doors burst open. Federal agents entered, moving with purpose toward Senator Whitfield. Senator James Whitfield, you're under arrest for conspiracy, environmental crimes, and corruption. You have the right to remain silent. The chamber exploded. Whitfield was shouting about entrapment and political persecution as they cuffed him. Other senators were demanding explanations. Reporters were practically climbing over each other for better camera angles. Through it all, Devon stood quietly at the witness stand, watching justice finally arrive for Riverside Heights. But he knew this was just one battle. Whitfield was one corrupt senator. Harmon was one biased judge. Titan Industries was one polluting company. The system that created them remained. Patricia appeared at his side. You did it, Devon. You actually did it. No, Devon corrected, watching Whitfield being led away. We started it. The real work is just beginning. Senator Hayes gavelled for order one final time. Mr. Taylor, this committee will be recommending immediate emergency measures to address the contamination in Riverside Heights, a full investigation of judicial bias in environmental crime sentencing, and funding for community-based monitoring programs statewide. Your testimony has been enlightening. As Devon gathered his materials, a young aide approached him nervously. Mr. Taylor, I'm from Senator Hayes' office. She'd like to speak with you privately. Devon looked at Patricia, who nodded. They followed the aide to a small conference room where Senator Hayes waited. Mr. Taylor, she began once the door closed. What you've done today was brave, but you've made powerful enemies. Whitfield has connections throughout the government. Titan Industries has enough money to tie this up in courts for years. Are you prepared for that? Senator, I've been preparing my whole life. Every asthma attack, every funeral for someone who died too young. Every time someone told me to know my place, it all prepared me for this fight. Hayes studied him for a long moment. How would you like to intern with the Environmental Justice Subcommittee? We could use someone with your perspective. I'm honored, Senator, but I'll be attending Stanford in the fall. The offer stands for Summers. Mr. Taylor, people like you, people who combine intelligence with courage, you're rare. Don't let them break you. They can't break me, Senator. I've got too much work to do. As Devon left the Capitol building, the afternoon sun seemed brighter despite the familiar haze over Riverside Heights. His phone buzzed with messages, congratulations, interview requests, threats from Titan Industries supporters. But one message stood out from the blocked number he recognized as Judge Harmon's. This isn't over. Devon deleted it and kept walking. Harmon was right, it wasn't over. But the judge had lost his power to intimidate. The truth was, out the world was watching, and change was coming to Riverside Heights. That evening, the community held a celebration in the park, the same park where children played while breathing poisoned air. But tonight was different. Tonight there was hope. Mrs. Williams hugged Devon with tears in her eyes. Parents thanked him for giving their children a chance at clean air. Even the local gang members' young men who'd been cycling through Judge Harmon's courtroom for years showed respect. You stood up to them. Marcus, a 20-year-old with 3 strikes from Harmon's court, said quietly. Nobody ever stood up to them before. We all did, Devon corrected. Every person who hosted a censor, everyone who testified about their health problems, everyone who refused to stay silent, we all stood up. As the celebration continued around him, Devon found himself standing apart, looking at the industrial zone in the distance. The smokestacks that had killed his father were still there, still pumping poison, though perhaps not for much longer. Mr. Rodriguez appeared beside him. "What are you thinking?" "About my dad. He would have loved to see this Whitfield in handcuffs, the truth finally exposed." "He did see it, Devon. Through you." Devon's phone rang. Stanford's area code. He answered nervously. "Mr. Taylor, this is Dr. Michael Foster from Stanford's Environmental Engineering Department. I wanted to personally congratulate you on today's testimony. It was masterful." "Thank you, Dr. Foster. I also wanted to discuss expanding your role in our program. We're launching a new initiative, the National Environmental Justice Monitoring Network. We want you to lead it." "Lead it? I haven't even started college yet." "You've already done more real-world environmental justice work than most PhD candidates. Mr. Taylor, what you've built in Riverside Heights needs to be replicated nationwide. Will you help us?" Devon thought about all the other Riverside Heights across the country. All the other children breathing poison while officials looked the other way. Yes, absolutely yes. After the call, Devon's mother found him. "There's someone here to see you." He turned to find Officer Jackson in civilian clothes holding a small box. "My sister made this for you," Jackson said, opening the box to reveal a handmade medal that read, "Riverside Heights Hero." "She's 8, Jackson explained. "Been breathing better since your testimony hit the news, and Titan Industries started cutting their night emissions. She wanted you to have a medal since the governor hasn't given you one yet." Devon took the handmade medal, more touched by this than any official recognition could have been. "Tell her I'll wear it with pride." As the night wore on, Devon found himself thinking about the journey from that morning at the courthouse to this moment. Judge Harmon had tried to destroy him for refusing to know his place. But his place wasn't where others assigned him, it was wherever he chose to stand. And he chose to stand for justice, armed with data and determination, refusing to be silenced or sold. The war for environmental justice was far from over. Titan Industries would appeal every ruling. Judge Harmon would fight his removal. Other corrupt officials would try to maintain the status quo. But something fundamental had shifted. The community had found its voice, and Devon had shown them that science could be a weapon for justice, as powerful as any law. As the celebration began to wind down, Patricia Chen approached him one last time. "Devon, you should know 63 young men wrongly sentenced by Judge Harmon were released today. 63 families reunited because you refused to back down." Devon looked around at his community, damaged but not defeated, poisoned but not powerless. Tomorrow the fight would continue. There would be depositions, trials, appeals, and countless attempts to discredit what he'd proven. But tonight, Riverside Heights had won a victory that no corrupt judge or senator could take away. They'd proven that truth, documented with science and spoken with courage, could still defeat power. And Devon Taylor, 17 years old, standing in a park in a poisoned neighborhood with a handmade medal around his neck, had proven that one person really could change the world. They just had to refuse to know their place. The celebration was still echoing in the streets when Devon's phone rang at midnight. The caller ID showed blocked, but something made him answer. The voice on the other end was deep, unfamiliar, and carried an edge that made Devon's blood run cold. "You think you've won something, Mr. Taylor? You've merely shown your cards. We know who you are now, what you care about, who matters to you." "Who is this?" "Someone who wants to offer you a final chance to reconsider. Drop the federal testimony scheduled for next week. Retract your statements about Titan Industries. Say your data was flawed. Never. Then you've chosen. Remember, you brought this on yourself." The line went dead. Devon stood in his room staring at the phone when he heard glass breaking downstairs. His mother's scream pierced the night. Devon ran down to find their living room window shattered, a brick lying among the glass shards with a note attached, "Last warning." "Call the police," his mother said, but her voice was shaking. "They won't do anything, Mom. Half of them are probably on Titan's payroll. Then what do we do? Before Devon could answer, Patricia Chen's number appeared on his phone. Devon, are you safe? I just got a call. Judge Harmon made bail. And there's something else. Titan Industries just filed a defamation lawsuit against you. They're seeking $50 million in damages. $50 million. We don't have $50 after paying for Dad's funeral. It's intimidation. But Devon, there's more. They've hired Morrison & Associates, the law firm that's never lost an environmental case. They're coming after you with everything. Devon sat on his couch glass, crunching under his feet, his mother holding a baseball bat like she was ready to fight the entire industrial complex herself. Let them come. The truth doesn't change because they hired expensive lawyers. The next morning, Devon woke to find reporters camped outside his house. But they weren't there for his story. They were there because Titan Industries had held a press conference at dawn, presenting their own data that contradicted everything Devon had found. Mr. Rodriguez called him immediately. Devon, turn on Channel 7. You need to see this. The screen showed Titan Industries CEO Thomas Whitfield, Senator Whitfield's brother, standing before charts and graphs. This young man, while perhaps well-intentioned, has made critical errors in his methodology. Our independent analysis shows that Riverside Heights' air quality is actually better than the state average. That's impossible, Devon muttered. Furthermore, Thomas Whitfield continued, we have evidence that Mr. Taylor's sensors were tampered with, possibly by environmental extremists looking to manufacture a crisis. The reporter asked, are you suggesting Devon Taylor fabricated his data? I'm suggesting that a teenager with a political agenda and homemade equipment is hardly a reliable source. We've been operating in Riverside Heights for 30 years. We're part of this community. We would never harm our neighbors. Devon's phone exploded with messages. Supporters expressing doubt, journalists asking if he'd comment on the revelations. Even some of the residents who'd hosted sensors wondering if they'd been deceived. Patricia arrived within an hour, looking grim. They're good, Devon. They've hired a PR firm that specializes in discrediting whistleblowers. By noon, half the state will think you're either a fraud or a puppet of radical environmentalists. But we have blockchain verification. The data can't be faked. They're not saying it's faked. They're saying your sensors were wrong from the start. Calibrated incorrectly, they claim. They've got 3 professors all on Titan's payroll, though they don't mention that swearing your methodology was flawed. Devon felt the walls closing in again, but this time it was different. This wasn't just about him anymore. The 63 young men released from prison, the families hoping for justice, the children who might finally breathe clean air, they were all counting on his data being real. We need to prove it again, Devon said suddenly. Live, in front of everyone. What do you mean? A public demonstration. Their sensors versus mine. Same location, same time with independent observers. Patricia smiled slowly. That's brilliant, but they'll never agree to it. They will if we make it public enough. Mr. Rodriguez, can you get us into the school auditorium? Already on it, his teacher replied. Within hours, Devon had issued a public challenge through social media. The post went viral within minutes. Titan Industries claims my sensors are wrong. I challenge them to a public test. Their equipment versus mine. Live stream. No hiding behind lawyers or PR firms. Just science. The response was immediate. Sensor Showdown started trending. Environmental groups shared it nationwide. Even celebrities started weighing in, demanding Titan Industries accept the challenge. Thomas Whitfield appeared on the evening news looking frustrated. This is a publicity stunt. We don't need to prove anything to a teenager. But the public pressure was building. By the next morning, Titan Industries had no choice. They agreed to the test, but with conditions. It would be at a location of their choosing with their safety protocols and their timeline. It's a trap, Officer Jackson warned when he heard. They'll rig it somehow. Let them try, Devon replied. Science doesn't lie no matter who's conducting the experiment. The test was scheduled for 3 days later at Titan Industries' own facility. They claimed it was for safety reasons, but everyone knew they wanted home field advantage. Devon spent those 3 days checking and rechecking his equipment, knowing that everything, his credibility, the federal case justice for Riverside Heights, hung on this demonstration. The night before the test, Devon couldn't sleep. He sat in his room surrounded by sensors and circuit boards when his mother knocked. "There's someone here to see you." Devon went downstairs to find an elderly white man in an expensive suit. Everything about him screamed money and power, from his Italian shoes to his Rolex watch. "Mr. Taylor," the man said, extending a hand that Devon didn't take. "I'm William Morrison, senior partner at Morrison & Associates, the law firm representing Titan Industries." "Indeed. I'm here to make you an offer, not a threat, not intimidation, just business." "I'm listening." Morrison pulled out a check. Devon's eyes widened at the amount, $10 million. "This is yours if you simply admit that your calibrations might have been off. Not that you lied, not that you fabricated anything, just that as a young scientist you might have made some errors. Titan Industries will then graciously commit to upgrading their filtration systems anyway as a gesture of goodwill. Everyone wins. Everyone except the people who've already died from the pollution. They're dead, Mr. Taylor. This money could help the living. Your mother wouldn't have to work 3 jobs. You could attend any university in the world. You could even continue your environmental work just elsewhere." Devon stared at the check. $10 million. More money than anyone in Riverside Heights had ever seen. Enough to transform his family's life, to escape the very poverty that made them vulnerable to men like Judge Harmon and Senator Whitfield. "My father died at 53, Devon said quietly. His lungs were so damaged that at the end every breath was agony. You know what his last words to me were? Make it count. He meant his death. Make it mean something." Devon tore the check in half. "Get out of my house." Morrison stood slowly. "You're making a mistake, young man. Tomorrow, when our experts dismantle your amateur science project in front of the world, remember that you could have walked away rich." "I'd rather be right than rich." How noble. And how naive. After Morrison left, Devon found his hands shaking. Not from fear, but from anger. They thought everything had a price. They thought everyone could be bought. Tomorrow he'd show them that some things, truth, justice, clean air for children, weren't for sale. The morning of the test arrived gray and humid, the air itself seeming to hold its breath. The parking lot of Titan Industries was packed with news vans, protesters, and supporters. Devon arrived with his equipment in the same damaged case from the courthouse incident deliberately. He wanted everyone to remember how this started. The test area was a cordoned section of the parking lot, equal distance between the industrial plant and the residential area. Titan Industries had set up an elaborate testing station with equipment that probably cost more than Devon's house. Their team of experts wore lab coats with the company logo, trying to look scientific and official. "The rules are simple," Thomas Whitfield announced to the assembled crowd and cameras. "Both sets of equipment will monitor air quality for 1 hour. Results will be compared by an independent panel of scientists." "Who chose the panel?" Patricia asked. "We agreed on them jointly," Whitfield said smoothly, though Devon knew 2 of the 3 panelists had received research grants from companies connected to Titan Industries. Devon set up his sensors, the same ones he'd been using for months, held together with electrical tape and hope. Next to Titan's gleaming equipment, they looked like toys. Several reporters were already writing their stories, David versus Goliath, the science edition. "Begin the test," Whitfield announced. For the first 20 minutes, both sets of equipment showed similar readings, all within legal limits. Titan's representative started looking smug. But Devon wasn't worried. He'd monitored this spot before. He knew what was coming. At minute 23, there was a shift in the wind. Devon's sensors immediately detected a spike in particulate matter. Titan's equipment showed nothing. "Your sensors are malfunctioning," one of Titan's scientists declared. "No, Devon said calmly. "Your filters are programmed to ignore anything outside normal parameters. Watch." He pulled out his phone and showed the live feed from his blockchain network, 43 sensors throughout Riverside Heights, all showing the same spike. "That's impossible," Thomas Whitfield said, but his confidence was cracking. "Check your raw data," Devon suggested, "before the filtering algorithm processes it." One of the panelists, Dr. Sarah Kim, from the State University, stepped forward. "He's right. Let me see the raw feed from your sensors." "That's proprietary." "Then you forfeit the test," Dr. Kim said simply. Reluctantly, Titan's team pulled up their raw data. There it was, the same spike Devon's sensors had detected, but their system had automatically dismissed it as an anomaly. "Your equipment is programmed to ignore irregular readings," Devon explained to the crowd. "That's how you've been passing inspections. When emissions spike, your sensors call it an error and delete it. But pollution doesn't care if it's regular or irregular. Kids' lungs don't get to filter out anomalies." The crowd erupted. Protesters started chanting. Reporters pushed forward with questions. Thomas Whitfield was trying to explain, but nobody was listening anymore. But Devon wasn't done. "There's more. Mr. Whitfield, why don't you explain why your emissions just spiked at exactly 11:23 a.m.? That could be anything. A truck passing by wind patterns. Or it could be because you're venting your storage tanks thinking nobody would notice during the test." Devon pulled up his phone again. "Fortunately, I had a friend positioned upwind with a camera." The screen showed video of white vapor being released from a valve on the Titan Industries building. "You set us up," Whitfield accused. "No, sir. You set yourselves up. You've been doing this for years, and you got comfortable. You thought nobody was watching, but we're always watching now." Dr. Kim stepped up to the microphone. "Based on what I've seen here, I'm recommending an immediate federal investigation into Titan Industries' monitoring equipment and reporting procedures." Thomas Whitfield's face had gone from red to white. "You can't. We'll sue." "Sue who?" Devon asked. "The truth." That's when the first Titan Industries employee broke ranks. A woman in a lab coat stepped out of the company's group and approached Devon. "My name is Dr. Jennifer Martinez," she said into the nearest reporter's microphone. "I've worked for Titan Industries for 12 years. Everything this young man says is true. I've been documenting it internally for 5 years, but my reports were always buried." "Jennifer, you signed an NDA," Whitfield warned. "I also signed an oath as a scientist to do no harm. I'm done being silent." She handed Devon a flash drive. "Everything's on there. Internal emails, suppressed reports, recordings of meetings where they discussed how to hide emissions. I'm the whistleblower who sent you those first emails, Devon, but I was too scared to come forward until now." The dominoes were falling. 2 more Titan employees stepped forward, then 3 more. Within minutes, a dozen current and former employees were ready to testify about the company's practices. Thomas Whitfield retreated to his office, but the damage was done. The test that was supposed to discredit Devon had instead triggered an avalanche of truth that Titan Industries couldn't stop. That afternoon, the FBI raided Titan Industries' offices. The evening news led with aerial footage of agents carrying out boxes of documents while Thomas Whitfield was led away in handcuffs, joining his brother in federal custody. Devon stood in the parking lot watching it all unfold when his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice that answered was one he'd been hoping to hear from. "Devon Taylor." "Yes." "This is Attorney General Robert Mitchell. I've been following your case. I think it's time we talked about taking this national. How would you feel about testifying before Congress?" Devon's heart jumped. Congress, the national stage, the chance to expose not just Titan Industries, but the entire system that allowed them to operate. When? Next month. We're opening hearings on environmental racism and judicial corruption. Your case is going to be Exhibit A. I'll be there. After the call, Devon found himself surrounded by supporters. Mrs. Williams hugged him with tears streaming down her face. Officer Jackson shook his hand with pride. Even Marcus, the young man with 3 strikes from Judge Harmon's court, approached with respect in his eyes. "You did it, man. You actually brought them down." "We brought them down," Devon corrected. "Dr. Martinez, the other whistleblowers, everyone who hosted censors, everyone who spoke up. We all did this together." As the sun set over Riverside Heights, Devon noticed something different. The air was clearer. Titan Industries had shut down their operations, pending investigation, and for the first time in decades, the neighborhood could breathe. But Devon knew this was just one victory in a longer war. There were thousands of Titan Industries across the country, thousands of Judge Harmons, thousands of Senator Whitfields. The system that created them, that valued profit over people, that saw poor communities as sacrifice zones, that system was still intact. His phone buzzed with a message from Stanford. "Watching the news. Incredible work. Can't wait to have you lead our environmental justice program. The real work is just beginning." Devon smiled, looking at his damaged sensor case, now a symbol of resistance rather than defeat. Judge Harmon had been right about one thing Devon didn't know his place. He was making his own place, carved out with science and courage, defended with truth and determination. That evening, Patricia Chen called with news. Devon Judge Harmon just pled guilty to corruption charges. He's looking at 20 years minimum, and he's agreed to testify about the network of corrupt judges and politicians he worked with. The network. Devon, what you uncovered in Riverside Heights. It's in 17 states. There's a coordinated effort to place polluting industries in minority communities while using the justice system to suppress any resistance. You didn't just expose local corruption, you've revealed a national conspiracy. Devon sat on his front steps processing this information. 17 states, hundreds of communities like Riverside Heights, millions of people breathing poison while corrupt officials profited from their suffering. "The congressional testimony," Devon said. "It's going to be bigger than we thought." "Much bigger. Devon, you're about to become the face of a national movement. Are you ready for that?" He thought about his father dead at 53. He thought about Sarah Chen, 4 years old, with an inhaler always in reach. He thought about the 63 young men freed from prison because he refused to stay silent. "I've been ready my whole life. I just didn't know it until now." As night fell over Riverside Heights, the stars were visible for the first time in years. The air was clean, children played without wheezing, and hope had replaced resignation in the streets Devon had walked his entire life. But even as neighbors celebrated and reporters filmed the victory, Devon was already thinking ahead. Congressional testimony, a national platform, the chance to ensure no other community suffered what Riverside Heights had endured. Judge Harmon had tried to give him life in prison. Instead, he'd given him a life's purpose. And Devon Taylor, 17 years old, standing in a neighborhood that had just won its first battle for justice, was ready to take that purpose to the highest levels of power. The real fight was just beginning, but now he had an army of truth seekers, whistleblowers, and communities ready to stand up and say, "We deserve clean air, fair justice, and a chance at life without poison in our lungs or prejudice in our courts." Tomorrow, he'd start preparing for Congress. Tonight, he'd breathe deep and clean, and remember that sometimes one person with the courage to document truth really could change everything. The preparation for congressional testimony consumed Devon's life for the next 3 weeks, but it was the phone call that came at 2 a.m. that changed everything. His mother shook him awake, her face pale in the moonlight streaming through his bedroom window. "Devon, there's someone on the phone. They say it's urgent. They say they're your father." Devon's blood went cold. His father had been dead for 3 years. He took the phone with trembling hands. "Who is this?" "Devon, it's me. I'm alive. I need you to listen very carefully. My father is dead. I was at his funeral. Who is this?" "The man you buried wasn't me son. I've been in witness protection. I'm sorry, Devon. I'm so sorry. But they're coming for you now, and I can't stay hidden anymore. The voice was right. The cadence, the slight rasp from years of breathing poisoned air, it sounded exactly like his father. But it was impossible. Prove it, Devon whispered. When you were 7, you built your first sensor out of an old smoke detector. You asked me why the air made your chest hurt. I told you that someday you'd find the answer and fix it. You said you'd be a scientist superhero. I said you already were. Devon's legs gave out. He sat on his bedphone pressed to his ear. No one else knew about that conversation. Dad, listen carefully. I don't have much time. 3 years ago, I discovered something about Titan Industries that went beyond pollution. They were manufacturing chemical weapons components, selling them through shell companies. When I tried to expose it, they tried to kill me. The FBI faked my death to protect me and to build a case. Mom's been grieving for 3 years. I know, son. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But if they knew I was alive, they would have killed you and your mother to draw me out. The only way to protect you was to let you believe I was gone. Devon's mind was reeling. The lung cancer. Staged. The body you buried was a John Doe who died of natural causes. The FBI needed me to disappear completely while they built their case. But when you started investigating Titan Industries, everything accelerated. You found in months what the FBI had been trying to prove for years. Where are you? I can't say. But Devon, your congressional testimony, it's going to trigger something bigger than you know. Titan Industries has connections to defense contractors, international crime syndicates, even terrorist organizations. When you testify, you're not just exposing environmental crimes. You're exposing a network that will kill to protect itself. Before Devon could respond, he heard commotion on his father's end, shouting glass breaking. They found me. Devon, whatever happens, finish what we started. I love... The line went dead. Devon sat in stunned silence until his mother appeared in his doorway. Who was it? He looked at her, seeing 3 years of grief etched into her face, and made a decision. Wrong number. He couldn't tell her, not yet, not until he knew for certain. But as he lay awake the rest of the night, Devon knew his world had fundamentally shifted. His father might be alive. Titan Industries was more than a polluter, they were arms dealers. And his congressional testimony was about to expose something that powerful people would kill to keep hidden. The next morning, Patricia Chen arrived with a security detail. The FBI insisted, she explained. There have been credible threats. What kind of threats? The kind that involve professional mercenaries. Devon, what have you not told me? He wanted to tell her about the call, but something held him back. If his father was in witness protection, revealing that could endanger him further. I've told you everything about the environmental crimes. Patricia studied him. But there's something else. I can see it in your eyes. Before he could respond, one of the security guards interrupted. We have a problem. There's been a breach at the EPA server where Mr. Taylor's data was stored. A breach. Everything's been deleted. The blockchain verification, the sensor data, all of it. Gone. Devon's heart raced, but then he smiled. No, it's not. He pulled out his phone and opened an app. I learned early not to trust any single system. Every piece of data was simultaneously backed up to 17 different servers across 11 countries. They'd need to breach systems in Switzerland, Iceland, and New Zealand simultaneously to destroy it all. Patricia laughed. You beautiful paranoid genius. But Devon wasn't celebrating. The breach meant they were getting desperate. And desperate people did dangerous things. That afternoon, as Devon worked on his congressional presentation, Dr. Martinez arrived with a sealed envelope. The former Titan Industries scientist looked terrified. This came to my house today. No postmark, no delivery record. It just appeared. Inside was a single photograph, Devon's father, very much alive, standing next to a man Devon recognized from news reports, Viktor Kozlov, an international arms dealer wanted by Interpol. That's impossible, Dr. Martinez said. "Your father died 3 years ago." "Did he?" Devon asked quietly, studying the photo. "The timestamp was from a week ago." "Devon, what is this?" He made a decision. "Dr. Martinez, what do you know about Titan Industries defense contracts?" Her face went white. We're not supposed to." "I know they were making more than industrial chemicals. What were they really manufacturing?" She looked around nervously, then leaned in close. "Precursor chemicals for nerve agents, officially for research purposes, but the quantities never matched. I tried to report it once. That's when they transferred me to environmental monitoring and made it clear my children's safety depended on my silence." "Do you have proof?" "I kept copies of shipping manifests, hidden encrypted. I was too scared to do anything with them, but after what you did exposing the environmental crimes..." "Devon, if this comes out, we're not talking about prison for corporate executives. We're talking about international war crimes tribunals." "Then it needs to come out. They'll kill us all. They're already trying." That evening, the security detail drove Devon to a safe house to prepare for his testimony. But as they pulled up to the nondescript building, Devon noticed something wrong. The streetlights were out. Too convenient for an ambush. "Drive," he told the driver. "Don't stop, just drive." The driver hesitated, but Patricia, who was with them, trusted Devon's instincts. "You heard him. Go." They pulled away just as two vans converged on the safe house. Devon watched through the rear window as armed men stormed the building they'd been seconds from entering. "How did you know?" Patricia asked. "My dad taught me to always watch the environment. Streetlights don't just fail in a perfect circle around a building." They drove for an hour, constantly checking for pursuit before Patricia's phone rang. It was the Attorney General himself. "Ms. Chen, is Mr. Taylor safe?" "Yes, but barely. Someone leaked the safe house location." "We have a mole. Bring him to the federal building. We'll protect him there until the testimony." But Devon shook his head. "No. If there's a mole, they know everywhere you'd take me. I have a better idea." 20 minutes later, they pulled up to Riverside Heights Community Center. The parking lot was full of familiar faces. Officer Jackson, Mr. Rodriguez, Mrs. Williams, Marcus, and dozens of others from the neighborhood. "You called them?" Patricia asked. "They called each other when word got out about the attack. This is my community. If anyone's going to protect me, it's them." Officer Jackson approached off-duty, but armed. "We've got people on every corner, Devon. Nobody gets in or out without us knowing." Inside the community center, Devon found an unexpected ally waiting, Judge Elizabeth Carter, the appeals court judge who'd freed him from Judge Harmon's courtroom. "Mr. Taylor," she said, standing. "I'm here unofficially, but I have information you need. Judge Harmon is dead." Devon's blood went cold. How? Officially suicide in his cell. Unofficially, he was about to testify about connections between Titan Industries and an international weapons trafficking ring. He knew names, dates, transactions going back 15 years. They killed him to keep him quiet. "Most likely. Mr. Taylor, your testimony tomorrow isn't just important, it's dangerous. Forces much larger than Titan Industries are involved. Are you prepared for that?" Devon thought about his father's voice on the phone, about the photograph with Victor Kozlov, about the chemical weapons Dr. Martinez had described. "Judge Carter, my whole life has been preparation for this moment." She smiled sadly. "Your father would be proud." "You knew him." "I knew of him. Robert Taylor was a good man who asked too many questions. The official story is that he died of cancer. But those of us in the system knew better. He was getting close to something that scared very powerful people. He's alive." The words escaped before Devon could stop them. Judge Carter's eyes widened. "What makes you think that—" Devon showed her the photograph. Judge Carter studied it for a long moment. "This changes everything. If your father is alive and working with federal authorities, if he's been gathering evidence from inside Kozlov's organization. Mr. Taylor, your testimony tomorrow could trigger the largest international law enforcement operation in history." As the night wore on, the community center transformed into a fortress. Residents took shifts standing watch. Former gang members worked alongside churchgoers, united in protecting one of their own who'd stood up for all of them. Around midnight, Mr. Rodriguez brought Devon something he'd been working on, a new sensor built from the salvaged parts of the one damaged at the courthouse. "I thought you might want this for tomorrow, a reminder of how this all started." Devon held the device, remembering that morning that now felt like a lifetime ago. He'd just wanted to present data about air quality. Now he was about to expose international chemical weapons trafficking. His phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Hello, son." It was his father's voice again, clearer this time. "Dad, where are you?" "I can't say, but I'm safe, for now." "Devon, I need you to know something. Tomorrow when you testify, you're going to be asked about more than just environmental data. They know about the weapons, they know about Kozlov, and they know I'm alive." "How?" "Because I'm going to be there, in the room. Hidden, protected, but there. When you reveal the chemical weapons evidence, I'll step forward. 3 years of undercover work comes down to tomorrow." "Mom doesn't know you're alive." "I know, and I'm sorry. But after tomorrow, if all goes well, I can come home. And if it doesn't go well..." His father was quiet for a moment. "Then you finish what I started. You're stronger than I ever was, Devon. You stood up to them with science and courage when you were just 17. I ran and hid. You were protecting us. I was. But you protected an entire community while facing them head on. That's why you're going to succeed where I failed." After the call, Devon couldn't sleep. He stood at the window watching his neighbors keep vigil and prepared for the testimony that would either reunite his family or destroy it. Patricia found him there at dawn. "It's time." The motorcade that assembled to escort Devon to Washington was unlike anything Riverside Heights had ever seen. Police cars, FBI vehicles, and dozens of personal cars filled with residents who insisted on accompanying him. They weren't letting him face this alone. The Capitol building loomed before them, its dome catching the morning sun. Media from around the world had gathered, somehow aware that this was more than just environmental testimony. As Devon walked up the steps flanked by security, he saw him, a man in a maintenance uniform, cap pulled low, pushing a cleaning cart. But Devon would recognize that walk anywhere. His father. Alive. Here. Their eyes met for just a moment. His father nodded slightly, a signal. Everything was in place. Inside the hearing room, Devon saw faces he recognized from news reports. Senators, representatives, Justice Department officials, even some foreign diplomats. Whatever was about to happen, the whole world was watching. The committee chair, Senator Patricia Hayes, called the session to order. "Mr. Taylor, you're here to testify about environmental crimes in Riverside Heights. Do you have additional information to present?" Devon looked at Dr. Martinez, who sat in the gallery with her encrypted drives. He looked at Patricia Chen, who nodded encouragingly. He looked at the maintenance man in the corner, his father ready to reveal himself after 3 years of death. "Senator Hayes." Devon began, his voice strong and clear. "What I'm about to reveal goes far beyond environmental crimes. Titan Industries wasn't just poisoning Riverside Heights. They were manufacturing chemical weapons components and selling them to international terrorists." The room erupted. Senators demanded order. Reporters shouted questions. Security moved to block the exits. "I have proof." Devon continued, holding up the drives Dr. Martinez had provided. "Shipping manifests, chemical formulas, financial transactions, and communication records between Titan Industries and known weapons traffickers." "This is outside the scope of this hearing," one senator objected. "Is justice outside the scope?" Devon shot back. "Is national security is preventing the next chemical weapons attack?" Senator Hayes gavelled for order. "Let him continue." Devon began presenting the evidence, each revelation more damaging than the last. Titan Industries had been using their facility in Riverside Heights as cover for producing chemical weapons precursors. The pollution that had killed so many, including allegedly his father, was actually runoff from weapons manufacturing. "But there's more," Devon said. "The man who originally discovered this operation, who tried to expose it 3 years ago, isn't dead as we were told. He's been in deep cover gathering evidence from inside the trafficking network." He looked directly at his father. "Robert Taylor, my father is alive, and he's here today." The maintenance man stood up, removing his cap. The room went silent as Robert Taylor walked forward, FBI agents emerging from concealment to surround him protectively. "My name is Robert Taylor," he said, his voice carrying across the stunned room. 3 years ago, I discovered Titan Industries weapons trafficking. When I tried to expose it, they attempted to assassinate me. The FBI faked my death and embedded me within Viktor Kozlov's organization. I have 3 years of recordings, transactions, and evidence of a global chemical weapons network that uses facilities like Titan Industries to manufacture weapons that have been used in terrorist attacks across 3 continents. The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. Devon watched his father testify, providing evidence that connected Titan Industries not just to Kozlov, but to a network of corrupt officials, judges like Harmon, who'd been paid to imprison anyone who got too close to the truth, and senators like Whitfield, who'd changed environmental laws to allow the weapons manufacturing to continue. "The pollution in Riverside Heights," Robert Taylor continued, "wasn't just negligence, it was murder. They knew exactly what they were releasing into our community. They counted on the fact that poor, predominantly black neighborhoods wouldn't have the resources or platform to fight back. They didn't count on my son." He looked at Devon with pride. What Devon accomplished with homemade sensors and courage exposing their environmental crimes created the opening we needed. When they came after him, they exposed themselves. Every threat, every bribe, every attempt to silence him was documented by federal agents. His refusal to back down gave us the evidence to bring down the entire network. Senator Hayes called for a recess, but Devon wasn't done. "There's one more thing. The chemical weapons manufactured at Titan Industries were used in an attack in Syria that killed 300 civilians, including 67 children. Those children died breathing the same chemicals that poisoned Riverside Heights, just in concentrated doses. This isn't just about my neighborhood anymore. It's about justice for victims across the world." The hearing room exploded into chaos. FBI agents moved in to secure the evidence. International law enforcement officials began making calls to their headquarters. And through it all, Devon stood firm, 17 years old, and carrying the weight of truth on his shoulders. During the recess in a secured room, Devon finally got to embrace his father. 3 years of grief and anger melted away in that moment. "I'm sorry," Robert whispered. "I'm so sorry for what I put you through. You were protecting us. You protected them better. You stood and fought while I hid in shadows. We each fought in our own way." Grace Taylor was escorted in by FBI agents, and the reunion was everything Devon had dreamed impossible. His mother's tears, his father's apologies. The family together again, but changed, marked by years of sacrifice and struggle. When the hearing resumed, the committee voted unanimously to expand the investigation. Titan Industries assets were frozen globally. Arrest warrants were issued for executives in 12 countries. And Devon Taylor, the teenager who'd just wanted to measure air quality, had triggered the largest international criminal investigation in history. But it was the last testimony of the day that hit closest to home. Marcus, the young man from Riverside Heights with 3 strikes from Judge Harmon's court, was called to speak. "I ain't no scientist like Devon." Marcus began, his voice rough with emotion. "But I know what it's like to be targeted by this system. Judge Harmon sent me to prison 3 times for crimes that white kids in rich neighborhoods would get probation for. Each time I came out, the air in my neighborhood was worse. My opportunities fewer, my family sicker. They didn't just poison our air, they poisoned our futures. Devon gave us hope that both could be cleaned up. As the hearing concluded, Senator Hayes addressed Devon directly. Mr. Taylor, your courage has exposed crimes that span continents and decades. The committee is recommending immediate environmental remediation for Riverside Heights review of every case Judge Harmon touched and establishment of a national environmental monitoring system based on your model. You've achieved more at 17 than most accomplish in a lifetime. Outside the Capitol, the crowd from Riverside Heights waited. When Devon emerged with his parents, both of them, the celebration was beyond words. They'd won more than they'd dreamed possible. But in the car ride home, Devon's father shared one final piece of intelligence. Kozlov escaped. He knows I'm alive, knows what we've exposed. This isn't over, son. Devon looked at his rebuilt sensor still functional, despite everything it had been through. Then we keep fighting, we keep monitoring, we keep exposing the truth. Even knowing the danger. Devon thought of all the children in Riverside Heights breathing cleaner air tonight, all the families reunited after wrongful imprisonment, all the communities worldwide that would benefit from what they'd exposed. Especially knowing the danger. That's what makes it necessary. As they crossed back into Riverside Heights, the sun was setting through clearer air than the neighborhood had seen in decades. Titan Industries was shut down, its executives in custody, its victims finally acknowledged. But Devon knew this victory was just a beginning. There would be other Titan Industries, other Judge Harmons, other Senator Whitfields. The system that created them still existed, still valued profit over people, still saw some communities as expendable. But now those communities had a model. A teenage boy with sensors and courage had proven that truth, properly documented and bravely spoken, could bring down giants. The revolution hadn't been televised, it had been live-streamed, blockchain verified, and community supported. That night, as Devon stood in his backyard with his father alive, free home, they watched the stars appear in unusually clear skies. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, maybe new threats from Kozlov's remaining network, certainly long legal battles as Titan Industries lawyers fought the charges. But tonight, a father and son who'd fought the same battle from different angles stood together, breathing clean air surrounded by a community that had refused to be silenced. You know, Robert Taylor said quietly, when you were 7 and said you'd be a scientist superhero, I thought it was just childhood fantasy. It wasn't fantasy, Devon replied. It was a promise. And as Riverside Heights settled into sleep, protected now by federal monitors, environmental laws with teeth, and the knowledge that one person really could make a difference, Devon Taylor kept watch with his sensors, guarding against the darkness that profit-driven poison always brought, ready to shine the light of truth wherever shadows gathered. The boy who'd refused to know his place had found it standing between his community and those who would harm it, armed with science and courage, proving that sometimes the greatest superpower was simply refusing to be silenced. The peace lasted exactly 72 hours. Devon was in his room reviewing acceptance letters from universities now competing to offer him full scholarships when the first explosion shook Riverside Heights. The blast came from the abandoned Titan Industries facility, sending a plume of toxic smoke into the night sky that triggered every sensor in Devon's network simultaneously. His phone erupted with alerts as his father burst through the door. "Get down!" Robert Taylor pulled his son to the floor just as the window shattered from a second explosion. Through the chaos, Devon heard his mother screaming downstairs. They found her in the kitchen, blood running from a gash on her forehead where flying glass had struck. As Robert tended to his wife, Devon's phone rang with a video call from an encrypted number. Victor Kozlov's scarred face filled the screen. "Hello, young Mr. Taylor. I believe you have something of mine." "I don't know what you're talking about. Your father, during his time in my organization, stole something far more valuable than evidence. He took the formula for a new chemical compound, one that makes previous weapons look like firecrackers. I want it back." "He doesn't have any formula," Devon said, but his father's expression told a different story. Robert took the phone. "Victor, I destroyed it." "No, my friend, you didn't. You're too much of a scientist to destroy knowledge, even dangerous knowledge. You hid it. And now you'll return it, or I'll turn Riverside Heights into a crater." The line went dead. Outside, sirens wailed as hazmat teams rushed toward the burning facility. Devon's sensors showed toxin levels rising rapidly. Whatever was burning at Titan Industries was releasing concentrated versions of the chemicals they'd manufactured. "Dad, what formula?" Robert's face was grim. "During my undercover work, I discovered Kozlov's scientists had created something horrific. A binary agent that could remain dormant in water supplies for years, then be activated remotely. One compound in the water harmless. Add the second compound and everyone who drank that water in the past 5 years dies within hours. That's genocide. Which is why I stole and hid it. But Devon, if Kozlov has people here, if he's desperate enough to burn Titan Industries, he's creating a distraction," Devon realized. "While everyone responds to the fire, he's looking for the formula." Patricia Chen called moments later. "Devon, evacuations are starting. The FBI wants your family in protective custody immediately." But Devon was studying his sensor data, noticing something odd. "Patricia, the wind patterns are wrong. The smoke from Titan Industries should be blowing east over the industrial district. Instead, it's being directed northwest." "Toward what?" Devon pulled up a map and his blood went cold. "Toward the water treatment plant." His father grabbed the phone. "He's not looking for the formula. He already has the first compound. He's going to contaminate the water supply and hold the entire city hostage." The FBI response was immediate, but might be too late. Devon could see on his sensors that the toxic cloud was already approaching the treatment facility. In 30 minutes, the city's water would be contaminated with the dormant compound, turning every resident into a potential victim. "I can stop it," Devon said suddenly. "The air filtration system I designed, if we can modify it quickly, we can create a counter-pressure zone around the water treatment plant, keep the smoke from reaching it." "That would take dozens of units," Robert protested. "We don't have time to build them." "We don't need to build them." Devon was already on his phone sending messages to his network. "Remember how 43 families hosted sensors? They also have the air purifiers I built for them. If we network them together, create a coordinated response." Within minutes, Riverside Heights mobilized like never before. Families loaded air purifiers into cars and trucks racing toward the water treatment plant. Officer Jackson coordinated with local police to clear routes. Mr. Rodriguez hot-wired units together using extension cords and power strips from a nearby hardware store that opened its doors for the emergency. But as they worked, Devon noticed movement in the shadows. Armed men moving toward the treatment plant from a different direction. Kozlov's team was already here. "Dad, we need to get inside the plant. If they introduce the compound directly into the system..." Robert understood immediately. Father and son, along with Officer Jackson and 3 FBI agents, entered the facility through a maintenance tunnel Devon had mapped months earlier while studying water flow patterns for contamination. The interior of the plant was a maze of pipes, tanks, and catwalks. Somewhere in this labyrinth, Kozlov's men were preparing to poison the water supply of 800,000 people. They split up to cover more ground, Devon and his father taking the central processing area. That's where they found them 5 men in tactical gear, one holding a metal canister that Devon recognized from his father's hidden files. "Stop." Robert Taylor stepped out, gun drawn. But he was outnumbered, and they all knew it. The lead operative smiled. "Mr. Taylor, Mr. Kozlov sends his regards. The compound in that canister will kill innocent people. Only if the second component is added, which it won't be as long as your son provides the complete formula, Mr. Kozlov was very clear. The boy has 1 hour to deliver it, or we release the catalyst into the air system. Every person who drank city water in the past week dies." Devon's mind raced. His father had hidden the formula, but where? Then he remembered something his father had said years ago when teaching him about encryption. The safest hiding place is one that doesn't look like a hiding place at all. "The sensor data," Devon whispered. His father's eyes widened with understanding. For months, Devon's sensors had been collecting more than just air quality readings. His father, during his supposed death, had been secretly embedding the chemical formula into the data streams disguised as atmospheric noise. The formula had been hiding in plain sight, distributed across thousands of readings, meaningless unless you knew how to reassemble them. "I need my laptop," Devon said loudly. "The formula's encrypted in my environmental data." The operative gestured with his gun. "Get it. 1 hour." They returned to the community center, now serving as an emergency command post. While FBI agents surrounded the building, Devon worked at his computer, his father beside him. "Are you really going to give it to them?" Patricia Chen asked. "I'm going to give them something," Devon replied, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He was creating 2 files. One contained the real formula, painstakingly extracted from the sensor data. The other was a masterpiece of scientific fiction, a formula that looked real, would pass initial analysis, but would produce an inert compound instead of a weapon. "It'll take them weeks to realize it's fake," Devon explained. By then we'll have them," his father finished. But they still had to deliver it, and somehow prevent the immediate threat. Devon had an idea, but it would require precise timing and the entire community's help. He sent a message to every person in his network. "In 30 minutes, I need every sensor, every purifier, every electronic device you have turned on at maximum power. Trust me." Then he called Kozlov's operative. "I have the formula, but I deliver it directly to Kozlov or no deal." "Impossible." "Then the city dies, and you get nothing. Kozlov wants this formula more than he wants casualties. Ask him." 10 minutes later, approval came through. A video link was established. Viktor Kozlov appeared on screen, sitting in what looked like a private jet. "Young Mr. Taylor, you've caused me considerable trouble. You're the one threatening to kill a city. Business, nothing personal. The formula. First, remove your men from the water treatment plant. After I verify the formula. You can't verify it without testing it, and that takes time we don't have. Here's my offer. I transmit the formula. Now your men leave immediately, and nobody dies today." Kozlov studied him through the screen. "You're very young to be negotiating with terrorists. And you're very desperate to be negotiating with a teenager." That actually made Kozlov laugh. "You remind me of your father. Very well. Send the formula." Devon transmitted the fake file, watching as Kozlov's scientists on the jet began analyzing it. Their excited chatter told him the deception was working for now. "Excellent," Kozlov said. "My men are withdrawing. But know this, young Taylor, if this formula is fake, if you've deceived me, I'll return. And next time, I won't be so civilized." The video cut off. FBI agents confirmed the withdrawal of Kozlov's men from the water plant, the canister of compound left behind, harmless without its catalyst. But Devon wasn't celebrating. He was watching the clock, waiting. In 3 minutes, his message would activate. "What did you do?" his father asked, noticing his tension. "Kozlov's jet is still in U.S. airspace, right? For another 10 minutes, yes? And all modern jets rely on electronic navigation systems." Understanding dawned on Robert's face, just as Devon's timer hit 0. Across Riverside Heights, thousands of electronic devices activated simultaneously, creating a massive electromagnetic pulse. Not strong enough to damage anything permanently, but sufficient to disrupt electronic systems for miles, including the navigation and communication systems of a certain private jet. Kozlov's plane, suddenly flying blind, was forced to make an emergency landing at the nearest airport where FBI agents were already waiting. The arrest was spectacular. Viktor Kozlov, one of the world's most wanted criminals, caught because a teenager turned a community's electronics into a makeshift EMP generator. But even as the FBI celebrated, Devon knew it wasn't over. Kozlov was just one player in a larger game. The formula, the real one, still existed, hidden in his data. And there would be others who would want it. That night, as Riverside Heights recovered from yet another crisis, Devon made a decision. He gathered his family, Patricia Chen, and key community leaders. The real formula, he began. It needs to be destroyed, completely. But it's distributed across thousands of data points. The only way to truly eliminate it is to wipe all the sensor data from the past year. But that's your evidence, Mr. Rodriguez protested. You're proof of what Titan Industries did. We have copies for the trials, but the live data, the blockchain, everything that could be used to reconstruct the formula, it all needs to go. His father placed a hand on his shoulder. You'd destroy your life's work to keep this weapon from existing, in a heartbeat. Grace Taylor spoke for the first time since the explosion. Do it. With his community watching, Devon initiated a cascade deletion. Across 17 servers in 11 countries, data began disappearing. The blockchain that had protected his evidence now ensured its complete destruction. Years of work, thousands of hours of monitoring, all sacrificed to prevent a weapon of mass destruction from being recreated. As the last data point deleted, Devon felt a weight lift. The formula was gone. Kozlov was captured. Riverside Heights had clean air. His father was home. The fight that had started with a simple science project was finally truly over, or so he thought. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor, a woman in a pristine suit, clearly federal government, but from no agency Devon recognized. Mr. Taylor, she said, I'm Director Sarah Mitchell from the National Security Agency. We've been monitoring your situation. The NSA. Devon's father stepped forward protectively. What do you want with my son? To offer him a job. Devon laughed. I'm 17. I'm going to Stanford. You are. But your country needs people like you. People who understand that science can be both a tool and a weapon, who have the courage to stand against those who would abuse it. We're creating a new division focusing on scientific threats to national security. We want you to lead it after you finish your education, of course. You want me to work for the government that let Titan Industries operate for decades. I want you to help us change that government, to ensure that what happened here never happens again. She placed a card on the table. Think about it. The offer stands. After she left, Devon found himself on the roof of the community center looking out over Riverside Heights. The Titan Industries facility was being demolished, cleared to make way for a park. The air was cleaner than it had been in living memory. Children played in the streets without wheezing. His father joined him. You're thinking about the NSA offer. I'm thinking about all of it. 6 months ago, I was just a kid with a science project. Now I've testified before Congress, exposed international conspiracies, stopped a terrorist attack. And you're still just 17, his father reminded him. You have time to decide who you want to be. I know who I want to be, Devon said. Someone who makes sure no community suffers what we suffered. Whether that's through the NSA, through Stanford, through whatever comes next, that's the mission. That evening, Riverside Heights held another celebration, this one more subdued, but somehow more meaningful. They weren't celebrating a victory over external threats this time, but their own transformation. The community that had been written off as a sacrifice zone had become a symbol of resistance and resilience. Marcus approached Devon during the celebration. Heard you're going to Stanford. That's the plan. I'm going to community college, Marcus said proudly. Got accepted today. Gonna study criminal justice, become a lawyer. Figure if you can use science to fight the system, I can use law. That's amazing, Marcus. It's because of you, man. You showed us we didn't have to accept what they gave us. We could fight back and win. As the celebration continued, Devon received a text from an unknown number. His blood went cold, thinking it might be another threat. But when he opened it, he found something unexpected. Mr. Taylor, watched your testimony. Your data helped expose contamination in my own community, starting our own monitoring network. Thank you for showing us how. A fellow scientist, age 16, Detroit. Then another came, and another. Teenagers from across the country, inspired by Devon's example, building their own sensors, monitoring their own air, refusing to be silent about environmental injustice. Patricia Chen saw him reading the messages. "You've started something bigger than just Riverside Heights." "We all did," Devon corrected. "Every person who stood up, who refused to be silenced, who demanded better, we all started this." The next week, Devon gave his final presentation to the Environmental Justice Committee, not as a victim or a whistleblower, but as an architect of change. He presented his proposal for a National Youth Environmental Monitoring Corps, teenagers trained to build sensors, collect data, and hold polluters accountable. "You're asking us to fund an army of teenage scientists?" one senator asked skeptically. "I'm asking you to empower communities to protect themselves. You've seen what one teenager with sensors can accomplish. Imagine thousands." The proposal passed unanimously. As Devon prepared to leave for Stanford, his childhood bedroom now packed into boxes, he found his father rebuilding one of the original sensors. "Keeping the tradition alive?" Devon asked. "Someone needs to watch over Riverside Heights while you're gone." "The EPA is monitoring now. The community has its own sensors. You don't need to—" "It's not about need," Robert Taylor said, looking at his son with pride. "It's about responsibility. You taught me that. We watch because someone has to. We speak because silence enables evil. We fight because our communities deserve better." Devon helped his father calibrate the sensor, one last act of scientific rebellion, before leaving for a future that had seemed impossible just months ago. On his last night in Riverside Heights, the community threw him a going-away party. But it wasn't really goodbye. Devon would return for holidays, summers, whenever he was needed. Riverside Heights was in his blood, its fight for justice encoded in his DNA as surely as any genetic trait. Officer Jackson pulled him aside during the party. "My sister wanted you to have this." He handed Devon a notebook. Inside, an 8-year-old's handwriting spelled out Devon Taylor's science notes, with drawings of sensors, clean air, and a stick figure hero standing up to monster-like buildings. "She says she's going to be a scientist like you." "Tell her she already is," Devon said, touched beyond words. "Every time she asks why or how, she's being a scientist." As midnight approached and the party wound down, Devon stood with his parents in their backyard, looking at stars that had been invisible through the pollution just months before. "I'm proud of you," his mother said simply. "Your father and I both. I couldn't have done any of it without you." "Yes, you could have," Robert disagreed. "That's what makes you special, Devon. You would have fought this fight even if you'd been alone. But you weren't alone, and you made sure nobody else was either." The next morning, as Devon's family drove him to the airport for his flight to California, they passed the former Titan Industries site. Demolition was complete, and already grass was being planted for the future park. A sign read, "Future home of the Devon Taylor Environmental Science Academy and Community Park." "They named it after me." "The community voted," his mother said, "unanimously." At the airport, saying goodbye was harder than Devon expected. 3 years thinking his father was dead, months of fighting for his community's survival, it had bonded them in ways that distance couldn't break. "Go change the world," his father said, embracing him. "But remember, the world changes one neighborhood at a time," Devon finished. "I know, Dad. I learned from the best." As his plane lifted off, Devon looked down at Riverside Heights one last time. From above, you couldn't see the individual sensors, the community bonds, the courage that had transformed a poisoned neighborhood into a symbol of hope. But Devon knew they were there, permanent and powerful proof that ordinary people with extraordinary determination could stand against any injustice. His phone buzzed with a message from the NSA director. "Offer still stands. Take your time. Change the world at Stanford first." Then another from Patricia Chen. "Titan Industries executives just pled guilty to all charges. 50 years minimum. You did it." And finally one from his father. Sensors showing clear air all week. Riverside Heights is breathing free. Come home whenever you need to remember why we fight. Devon smiled, settling in for the flight toward his future. He was 17 years old, heading to Stanford, with a full scholarship, carrying the weight of his community's hopes, and the knowledge that one person really could make a difference. But he also carried something else. The understanding that real change came not from individual heroes, but from communities that refused to accept injustice. He hadn't saved Riverside Heights. He'd helped Riverside Heights save itself. And as his plane flew west toward new challenges and opportunities, sensors across the country activated in teenage hands, measuring air quality, demanding accountability, refusing to be silent. The revolution. Devon had started with a simple question. Why do so many kids in my neighborhood have asthma? Had become a movement that no corporation or corrupt official could stop. The boy who'd stood before Judge Harmon, threatened with life in prison for a science project, was now flying toward a future where science and justice walked hand in hand, where communities had the tools to protect themselves, where truth properly documented and courageously spoken could still defeat power. Devon Taylor was going to Stanford. But more importantly, Devon Taylor's example was going everywhere, carried by young people who'd learned that they didn't have to know their place, they could make their own.